is Tuesday, October 3rd, and the time is 1 p.m. Has the front lobby been cleared? Thank you, sir. We are here today for a school board briefing meeting today. Welcome. Does the superintendent have any comments or changes in regards to the agenda at the moment?
No comments or changes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Right now, we have 5 items today on the agenda. Per board protocol, each board member should strive for 4 minutes for the initial comments, 2 minutes for follow-up, for a total of 10 minutes. Let's proceed to item B1, agenda review. Whenever you're ready, Dr. Bernier.
Mr. Chair, at this time I have no questions directly submitted. We have another items on the agenda. We've done a great job in pre-brief and working with all of you. If there are any questions, I would be happy to take them up at this time.
Word, comments, questions? Was that Ms. Morgan? Go ahead.
It was on. I believe this is the agenda where, Dr. Bernier, I sent you a note saying I thought it would be helpful, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the agenda. I thought it would be helpful not to pull an item, but to have you explain something. What was it? What are we approving?
I can get it. It's the item, I don't know the number off the top of my head. I'm clicking just like you are. If you don't mind, it was the item specifically, which was the piggyback off of Broward County for temporary staff to be used as instruction. It's also known as, excuse me just one second, I have the note, university instructors. It was about a $2 million purchase of helping us to ensure that we have some additional vacancies filled moving forward into the school year. It was for 25 teachers. I'll get the number as I look it up on the other agenda.
Yeah, thank you. I was listening and not looking, but yes, that's the one. And I felt it was important that the superintendent address that for staff, and that this evening's meeting, I offered to pull the item so he could offer the explanation again this evening, but I don't know that I'm just wondering if there's some way we can insert the explanation before we go to, approval of the agenda, so we don't have to pull the item. Yes, we should pull it if board members want to discuss it, but if there's no real discussion, then maybe there's some way he can address it just for public information.
I'd be happy to address it, and then the board could certainly take up the matter if they still wanted to pull it for additional discussion this evening. Specifically, we're talking about the item again for university instructors. So I guess it begins with, why would we use a company like this just even to begin with? One of the things that I have been charged with, I believe, by this board is trying to find applicants to ensure that we are recruiting teachers and making sure we find applicants to fill our vacancies. We have to continue to explore those options as the Human Resource Division under Mr. Dodig and Hillary McLean has continued to revise its pipeline. We are still working on finding and getting educators moved into our classrooms. However, when an opportunity presented itself, potentially to fill 25 vacancies, it's another opportunity to take some of the pressure off staff related to them having to cover for specific school buildings, classes. We're trying to exhaust every possibility that we could have and we could use in order to bring temporary instructors to our building. The aspect of this is it's a $2 million contract. Some of that money is paid clearly directly to teachers who would take these positions, but there are company fees associated with that. We contracted only to pay for the hours worked, which would include our 7.6-hour day. The $2.9 million, though, assumes the temporary teachers would have started at the beginning of the school year. So that 2.9 actually will be less because those teachers will not work the entire school year, although they are contractually obligated, and we are contractually obligated to keep them until the end of the year. So even if we were to find a science teacher for one of the other schools, we could not place that person in that vacancy. This person is, in a sense, has a guarantee of employment, just like our teachers do from the beginning of the year, short of any one of those things that can occur where a teacher would have to separate service based upon conduct or something of that. Same responsibilities here. We are contracting to use 25 of those teachers for the remainder of the year. Can we hire them? Yes, we can, but we have to wait for the contractual obligation to finish, which brings you to the question of why would they want to become a teacher? Currently, these teachers employed by university instructors do not receive benefits. While they are paid slightly more than our teachers, and I'll just say more, I won't want to qualify it with the word slightly. They are paid more. The salary approximately for our average teacher, $53,138, equates to about $25 an hour. Salary only, these individuals working for the company at our best guess is about $45 an hour. The reason for that cost differential is they have no benefits. So I'm going to take you through another set of numbers. The other set of numbers are salary and benefits. When you add our benefits into our particular teachers, that raises that average salary with benefits to $69,079. That includes the benefits. That raises that hourly wage to approximately $33.21, so $33 an hour. Nothing changes with the $45 an hour for the other individuals because they don't get benefits. So there is that gap. The reality of the financial aspect of this is, yes, we're looking at about a $2 million cost proposal, which will actually estimate winding up being about a 2.073, again, because we didn't have those dates. The cost to fill these teachers would be 1.726. So the cost differential, so we would have had to fill these teachers' positions anyway. We do not believe we're going to have enough to fill these 25 slots, so we're trying to fill them, would be $346,000. So we would be spending this money anyway if we had a teacher. So we're trying to find another way to put more individuals in the classroom, just like when we looked at J1 visas. We're looking for another opportunity, another way to fill some of our vacancies, because a vacancy is a vacancy. And it's important to children to have a certified instructor in front of them. It's important for a principal to have that as well. But it's also important to the staff, because any unfilled vacancy that's not covered by a substitute becomes a class that needs to still be covered. And this does help us. Does it fill all of our need? No, it does not, but I believe it is a step in the right direction, and I wanted to be able to look you, the teachers, and all the other individuals in the face and say we are doing everything possible to fill all of our vacancies. That's just some of the information I have. I'm happy to entertain any board member questions around this particular item.
Do you have anything else, Ms. Morgan? Mr. Persons, followed by Ms. Patrica.
Would you mention which subjects they'll be teaching, their expertise?
The teachers specifically be employed would first be distributed to, this is leading up to the answer, sir, first be distributed to our BSI schools. Those are our then that would specifically G. Weaver Hips, as well as our need at Fort Myers Middle School. The remaining of the teachers will be distributed out at 3 other sites. The names I don't have directly in front of me, but I know they include River Hall. So the aspect of this is these teachers will be certified in subject areas: first grade, second grade, science, mathematics. While all teachers are important to the continuity of a school building and its continued operations and making things smooth, we have specifically invested in academic core areas, not in our other electives or other areas for teachers.
Ms. Patrica?
I was just going to suggest that perhaps tonight, when the superintendent provides a response to public comment, that might be a good time to provide that sort of, that way we don't have to pull it, because I think the board's questions are answered. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions, board members? I agree with you, Ms. Patrica. That's kind of what I was thinking, so.
I will be prepared for public comment.
Nothing else on any other topic then? Okay, we're going to proceed on to item B2, Independent Sales Surtax Oversight Committee. And we have Ms. Millay over there. How are you doing today? I'm doing great. Good. Yes. I think.
That mic, Ms. Millay, I think that microphone needs to come closer. Oh, it is closer. It's about as close as you get. I could only see the other one.
I'm going to try the other one.
Can we get somebody to assist with this? Thank you.
Voice for now.
There we go.
Ms. Millay, before you begin, if I could just introduce you real quickly, just Susan Millay has an immense amount of responsibilities that relates to our school district, one of which is being the faculty liaison to the Independent Sales Tax Oversight Committee, otherwise known as ISOC. ISOC is responsible for presenting to you 4 times a year. And in our recent audit, we've had some information related that during the COVID years and last year during our small hiatus during Hurricane Ian, we missed a presentation. This is one of the 4 presentations that she will present this year, and one of those presentations needs to be by a member of the committee as well. So just want to put this in perspective. This is an update regarding how things are transpiring with our half-penny sales tax. Ms. Millay?
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Bernier and Ms. Dupree-Bruno. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to share with you the great progress our Independent Sales Surtax Oversight Committee is making in overseeing compliance with the voter referendum for how we spend the sales tax collections. Today we're going to be talking about the need, why we have the Change for Change program. We'll talk about the financial or budget related information, provide just a little bit of historical background and a report out of what the committee is actively pursuing and next steps for the committees, and then hear from you as to any feedback for the committee. First of all, the background for our Change for Change program. The district launched the Change for Change campaign in 2017 and 18, I believe, and the goal was to collect sales tax and reinvest it in our community and our schools due to the aging infrastructure and other challenges that we're seeing with decreased funding in capital appropriations. Importantly, there are 4 categories of authorized expenditures for the sales tax. So when we went to the community, we listed these 4 categories. These are the only 4 categories of work where we are authorized to expend sales tax, and that is what the Sales Tax Oversight Committee is monitoring. For example, sales tax funds cannot be used to pay for anyone's salary because that's in a different budget than the capital budget. A large contributor to our need is the age of our facilities. So on the slide you'll see the age of schools that are over 60, 50, and 40 years old, and with depleted revenues or taxes coming in for funding the repairs and maintenance of those buildings. That was the largest driver for our need, in addition to dwindling tax collections, impacts fees, and allocations from the state for capital projects. A great question is, what percentage of our sales tax is allocated in our overall capital budget? So as you can see by this graph, the sales tax funds for FY24 is about $383 million. So that's the estimated revenue coming in, and you'll see that a third of that pie is from the sales tax itself. So thinking of it another way, if you were to remove that 1/3 and see the pie as a 2/3 of a pie, we've now added 50% again of our capital budget through the sales tax collection program. The sales tax budget for the year, these are planned projects, are shown. The areas that are listed for expenditures are those areas that the voters approved with the referendum. And in addition, we also have reserves that we use for funding those large capital projects which we obtain certificates of participation for. Here's a line graph showing how the collections are year over year for 2 full years, and also beginning again the start of our fiscal year, which is July 1st. The spikes that you're seeing each quarter, the state does a true-up of collected revenues. So for example, they might anticipate $7 million was collected and issue that to us, and then later they get the finalized numbers and it might be another $500,000. So you'll see those bumps each quarter where the true-ups occur. Interestingly enough, we did not see a decline in sales tax either during the COVID period or following Ian. The expenditures have stayed the same and been slightly higher. A little bit of oversight of history about the background of the Independent Sales Surtax Oversight Committee, which we refer to as ISOC. So the voters passed the referendum in fall of 2018. The first committee meeting was held March of 2019 and has been held every quarter since then. And they manage there's a school board policy that defines the scope of what the Sales Tax Committee is responsible for. This slide is a report out of the June 22nd meeting from the ISOC Committee. This was planned to be delivered last month. However, we had yet another storm interfere with that, so you're going to get 2 for 1 today. Attached to the agenda in board docs are the meeting minutes that have been approved since the June 22nd meeting. They were approved at our September meeting. And at that meeting, the committee voted unanimously that the district's use and expenditure of the sales tax proceeds were consistent with the plan and approved project list. So that is one of the primary missions of the committee, is to hear about the projects that are being worked on, hear about how the funds are being spent, and double check if everything's in compliance with the voter referendum. In addition, at the June meeting, the committee recommended to take to the community the presentation they had worked on the prior year. So in the prior year, the committee suggested that they develop an outreach presentation that the committee members would then deliver to the community to inform them of the work they're doing, overseeing the work that the district is doing. So at the June meeting, the motion was made that the presentation was in final form and it was ready to take it on the road, and at the subsequent meeting, we can report from the September 21st meeting that we actually had delivered the very first community presentation to the Foundation for Lee County Schools on August 18th. That presentation was very well attended. I think there were over 50 members of the board and interested parties for the foundation. I think it was a complete and fun presentation, and a lot of information was shared, and I think that it was very well received. Also at the September meeting, the draft meeting minutes, which are also attached in board docs, were the June meetings were approved, meeting minutes were approved, and the September meeting minutes are attached. The committee recommendations following the vote approving that everything was in compliance again was to continue with the delivery of the presentations to the community. Several others have been scheduled and will continue to be scheduled. We had thought we were going to share the community presentation today. However, it has been provided in board docs last week. This is one of 2 presentations I'll deliver today. We thought 3 might just kill you, so instead of having to go through death by PowerPoint for me again, that is in the board docs for your review. I'm sure you would have seen it last week. So the next steps for the ISOC committee, they are very closely connected with our communications department that does an amazing job of getting the word out on all of our projects through social media, our website, press releases, in-person events, ribbon cutting ceremonies, etc. And in addition, our communications department prepared a change for change summary for each school, highlighting how much sales tax had been spent at the school and what major projects have been delivered. So kudos to our communications department for putting all that information together. The other recommendation from the ISOC was to continue to present the ISOC committee presentation to the community, and you can see some of the places and dates that were scheduled for on the slide. The next ISOC meeting is scheduled for December 7th, and also wanted to welcome Ms. Jada Langford Fleming to the ISOC committee. She participated in September at our first meeting, so welcome as the board liaison to the ISOC committee. And then quarterly, we will have presentations or updates to you from either staff members or at least annually from the chair of the ISOC committee. Superintendent Bernier, those are my, that's my information to share. Any comments?
Thank you, Ms. Millay. I think the most important thing is to go back and clarify the fact that while the board policy allows for written updates, we've made it clear at the cabinet level that we, this year, in order to be respectful to our community's desire to know more about this, we do expect there to be 4 presentations publicly before the board so that we can be in true alignment with what I think the policy expectations are. I think it's worth mentioning the dates out loud. The ISOC committee members will be delivering community presentations on September 30th. That one has since passed, but there are still several more, and those dates will be advertised through our comms team. I think that'll be helpful for us to not only look at what we do this fall, but what we also do in the spring, and maybe that opportunity for the next presentation would be the opportunity to do that presentation an additional time before the winter holidays, so that that presentation is seen one more time publicly, not just at these events, but in the board chamber where the work surrounding the sales tax is done and is so important that all of you have oversight as well. So those are my comments before leading it back to the chairman for our meeting, and any questions from board members.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier, and thank you, Ms. Millay. Do we have any board member comment or questions at this moment? Ms. Langford Fleming, followed by Ms. Jordan.
Well, Ms. Millay, you made my job a lot easier today. I was supposed to give an update on the ISOC committee, so didn't we do a great job, everyone? I did write down just a couple of things that may not have been mentioned through the presentation, which was excellent. Yes, the committee did make a decision to deliver this message through presentations. That was discussed and throughout the community. Just for transparency, I had spoken with a constituent that did attend the Foundation for Lee Schools and thought the presentation was excellent and is excited to know that that's going to be shared. The other thing, they did discuss security, and you guys gave a great update on the open gate and how that's being utilized at our schools, and hopefully every school will have that security in place by end of year. And there was a question a gentleman asked, I believe, about Hurricane Ian effort cleanup. If I recall, I don't believe that any of the half cents has been spent on hurricane cleanup. That's been used somewhere else. So I just wanted to reiterate that for the public. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. I did watch the meeting as well, and so I was kind of curious. I know that someone else did the first presentation, and I heard about it after the fact, otherwise I would have gone there. And I know that we have some places and dates, but if we could please have all the dates so that way if we were able to attend, we would be able to possibly go there, because I know I would be at those meetings as well. But then again, so another member came up and said, well, I was at the first one, I watched it, so I think I can give the second one. How are you making sure that they're consistent in what the message is? And I know when they were all out there doing it, everybody was, like Ms. Patrica was out there, before this came to be. Given the message, how do you do you give them the tools, all the information, the script of what they're speaking on for each one? If I'm doing it, or Mr. Person's doing it, if all of us are doing it and we're doing it differently, how do we ensure that it's all consistent?
We're not doing it.
No, we're not. They are, the members are.
Okay, all right.
So Mrs. Jordan, based upon your question, I just want to make sure, what you're looking for, and Ms. Morgan helped with the clarification question, you're looking for this particular set of presentations are being only done by ISOC members. So how are we consistent ISOC member to ISOC member to ensure the presentation is given in a similar format and a similar vein?
Okay, so ISOC members went out and someone delivered this information to the foundation. Someone else a second person went out and did the presentation to the National Pan-Atlantic Council. It was a totally different person, from my understanding.
Correct.
So now we have the Horizon Council in here, we have a stereo chamber, we have all these other ones. So the members of ISOC are the ones who are given the presentation. And are we making sure that, or are they making sure that the presentations are consistent with one another versus me talking about whatever I like and them speaking about something else? Not me personally, them.
There has been a lot
That
of
makes
work
sense.
in preparation to ensure that the individuals providing this presentation from the ISOC committee are as identical as possible as two personalities can be in presenting the same information, including a structured PowerPoint that is identical to every PowerPoint. But I'll let Ms.
Okay.
Millay continue to explain some of the work that's gone on behind the scenes to ensure that consistency.
That's correct. Everyone will be using the same presentation, and the committee agreed that the chair, Mr. Schimpf, would deliver the first couple of presentations, and they would attend and watch, whether in person or remotely, the delivery so that they could practice. There's a script that goes along with it that kind of gives the talking points for each of the slides. So I will say there were probably 4 or 5 members in attendance at the first presentation. I do want to clarify that the September 30th Pan-Hellenic Council presentation has been postponed. So there was a conflict with another Pan-Hellenic activity that didn't come up till a little bit late. So that one will be presented. It will be rescheduled. So we've had exactly one delivery, and we have others as we're scheduling them, and the committee members will also attend, listen, prepare, and when they have a level of comfort, they'll go ahead and deliver the message to their community members.
Thank you. And I think this is great, them being out there and sharing, the narrative of what has taken place. So thank you for that. And thank you for what you do.
Well, Mrs. Jordan, if I can follow up on the other item, we will ensure that the dates of all the presentations through what has been scheduled are provided to the board so that they can be added to your calendars. And at least you'll know you have the option to going to those presentations or not. I'll ensure that Mr. Gomez works with the communications team and makes that happen through our chief of staff, Mr. Ramirez.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that, because I really love going and seeing what the comments are and what the community is feeling. So thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli?
I'll just be real quick. I was at the meeting that Mr. Schimpf made the suggestion and recommendation. This was what they voted on that. This is what they wanted to do. So I'm confident in the presentation and the ability to send the same message. So I just wanted to reiterate that this was actually their idea, and I thought it was a great idea. So I just wanted to add that little piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Patrica?
Yes, if I may, through the chairs to Dr. Bernier. Last year, every football game and basketball game and everything I attended made an announcement about the half-penny sales tax. I've only been to one game so far this year where that has occurred. Have we stopped doing that as a district?
I've been to 2 football games so far, and both were done at the halftime and during timeouts and during water breaks. That is still an expectation that those announcements continue to be read. Updated scripts have been provided to the schools based upon any updated or additional spend that may have gone into that building or into that community's building. So I will ensure that message continues to go out, but I've heard it at both the events I've attended so far.
Okay, and then the other thing is, I think I remember in the recesses of my brain asking you whether Open Gate was funded by the half-penny sales tax, and Mrs. Langford Fleming, you just confirmed that for me. What are we doing to advertise that? Is there a sticker on those Open Gate machines? Are we continuing to have signage on our, new signage on our campuses when large projects are funded by the, just in general, you know, are we continuing to make signage and stickers or whatever a priority?
We have continued to go ahead and try to get additional signage out to additional sites. I know Ms. Millay has been working with the communications team in order to do some more of that. Specifically what I meant before about the scripts being updated, that updated spend would be reflected in there, but we could update the scripts one step further. As school buildings roll out Open Gate, we could make sure that that is specifically announced, that this amount of money spent at your school building also includes some of the following updates that are permissible. That is so far yes, we can make sure that happens.
Thank you.
Anybody, Mr. Persons, followed by Ms. Morgan.
I don't remember seeing it in this one, but during this presentation I attended at the foundation, they mentioned that the half-cent sales tax, 20% of it was from the tourist, which means our local taxpayers don't have to burden that amount of money, and that's a sizable amount.
Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, and I would just say, great idea to extend the communications to the school level. And I would simply say, I think on some of these things that are handed out, whether at a football game or in a student SAC meeting or whatever, that some reference be made to a link to that particular school's website, because I think people, it's more personal when it's their school, their kids. So that would be my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. I've seen the presentations. I appreciate. Thank you, Ms. Millay, and thank you to the ISOC committee for their hard work.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next up on the agenda is item B3, focus on achievement, QLESS and student enrollment update, and I believe we have Executive Director Ralph for that, so, yes.
As our Executive Director for Student Enrollment comes to the microphone, along with the Exceptional Student Education Coordinator for Student Enrollment, Ms. Sinclair, I think it's just really important to recognize some of the individuals seated in, I guess, the second and third rows of this particular presentation. And I just want to make sure before I make a comment, these wonderful women are the backbone of our student enrollment office. They do the vast majority, if not all, of the interactions with the countless number of public inquiries, parental meetings, grandparent meetings, student meetings, and making sure that they do everything humanly possible as quickly as possible to get our students enrolled, get a site selected, and help them through the process of becoming a Lee County School District student and their families to become a School District of Lee County family. So from your superintendent, I know the board feels the same way. Just wanted to take an opportunity to recognize Ms. Ralph as the Executive Director and the Exceptional Student Education Coordinator from Student Enrollment. But I know that Ms. Ralph, Dr. Ralph, will certainly turn over her opportunity to also recognize the hard work of the people seated in the first couple of rows. We're deeply indebted to you. Thank you.
Dr. Bernier, may you indulge me just for one moment? So, I wanted to as well thank everyone. We see the emails, the phone calls, everything, especially with proximity. And if my board members don't mind, can we ask you to stand up, the people in the student enrollment office here in this first row? We want to thank you. We truly appreciate everything that you do. Thank you so much. So thank you for my indulgence. I appreciate it. Proceed.
Good afternoon, board members. Dr. Bernier, Attorney Dupree Bruno. I'm going to go just a tiny bit out of order since we've already done the round of applause. I do want to introduce the staff in the Student Enrollment Department. First, I'm Soretta Ralph. I'm the Executive Director of the department, and with me is
Kristen Sinclair, Exceptional Student Education Coordinator with Student Enrollment.
And with me is the entire Student Enrollment Department. I don't think after all of the years that these ladies have worked in the department, many of them for many years, have ever been to a board meeting, briefing, or even been acknowledged at a board meeting. So I wanted to take that opportunity today to introduce them. I also want to share that the group of people in the audience have 309 years and 9 months of service with the School District of Lee County. And of special note, they have 170 years and 5 months of service in the Student Enrollment Department, which to me, that's a lot of knowledge that's here in front of us today. So just to introduce the staff, in the back row, I have 2 office managers, Sharon and Annie. And I also have in the front row, in collaboration with Student Services, we have a social worker on staff, and this is Shakira. She meets the needs of those families as they come into the office and helps them immediately as they come in. Our enrollment specialists that we have are Dee, Annette, and then on the first row I have Nancy, Yachty, Barbara. Now I'm not seeing everybody. Missy, Alma, Rosemary, Lala. We also have Neri, and Neri's with us today after only 2 days in the Student Enrollment Department. So ask her any questions that you would like. I'm sure she'll have the answers for you. And I also have Nikki. Missing, we have 1 enrollment specialist, Marina, who is gone this week, and we also have a vacant position, which is our school counselor. Carol has left our department and moved on to be the APC at Estero High School, and that position right now is vacant. And I would be remiss if I did not introduce my executive assistant and the department's executive assistant, Terry. So if it's okay with Dr. Bernier, I'd like to release the staff because we're going to have parents in the QLIS system waiting to be served. So we're very excited to be here today because we are going to provide some information about student enrollment and share how we continue as a department to strive to improve our customer service with both the QLIS and the FOCUS system. Let's look now at the QLIS system. I'm sure all of you are aware of this useful tool that we implemented starting, I believe, in late June, early July this year to meet the needs of our families as they come to the Student Enrollment Department. QLIS is an online appointment scheduling service that allows parents to make an appointment, or if they actually come to the office, they can join the line. They will also then get information about when their appointment is, and they can leave and come back at a time of convenience. They can join the line or make an appointment through the QLIS app. They can use their cell phone to text their appointment, or they can also use one of the kiosks in the department. Please notice if you see people standing outside our department, those parents are waiting because their time is almost up and they're going to be summoned, or they're actually choosing to wait at the student enrollment office because it's just a short time until their appointment. QLIS provides updates to the cell phone every 15 minutes through a text that the parents get telling them how much time until their next appointment. And it also is providing an excellent support for the district's Envision 2030 by providing continuous improvement and customer service. So we're very excited about QLIS. QLIS also provides a lot of metrics in the QLIS dashboard that we can all view. The example displayed is outcome by date. This slide is visualizing the customer appointments, the customers that have left the line, the customers that were no-shows, and the customers actually served by staff. Let's look specifically at August the 28th. School had already started on August the 28th, but if you look at this slide, it's going to show you that 997 customers used the QLIS app on that day alone to make an appointment or join the line. 347 customers were no-shows. That means they held a spot, but after 5 minutes after they were summoned, they did not arrive to the student enrollment staff member. 145 customers were in the virtual line, but at one of the 15-minute updates, they actually put their status as they wanted to leave the line. 505 customers were summoned and received services with the Student Enrollment Department on this one day, on August the 28th. Now, even though school had already started, we did have extended hours. We were opening early and we were staying late to meet the needs of those families. The customers that were no-shows, you're probably concerned about why they were no-shows. The customers that were no-shows, those are parents that actually left the line. They could have gotten an update on their time, and they decided, oh, I can't wait that long, or it's not convenient for me. I'll make an appointment at another day, or I'll come back. Also in the message provided every 15 minutes in the update on the cell phone, the parent is given information about Focus, which is now available to all families, where they can register their child online, kindergarten through 12th grade, or they can actually re-enroll their child online. So some of those parents were actually going to leave and do it themselves. On August the 28th, we had 194 parents that actually entered registrations online through Focus. Of those, 134 were re-enrollments and 60 were brand new students to the district. When parents enter their applications online through Focus, they still have to upload all of the required documents, and they have questions that they answer. Our staff receives a notification. They'll go in and they will validate and review that information that the parents uploaded, and then they'll follow up with the parent through Focus by telling them additional documents they need or asking them questions about information that they may have left out of their enrollment. After everything is updated, we send a notification to the parent for them to complete their school choice application, and then they will receive the evaluate placement that shows them their school of enrollment, and they're ready to start. That usually leads to an email by the parent back to the enrollment specialist asking those parental concerns like, where's the bus stop? Do they have before and after care? Is this a uniform school? So even though QLIS Focus is a wonderful tool for our families and it's open 24/7, we still have to take time to validate all of those enrollments and review all of the documents that are uploaded. But we're very excited about the convenience it's providing to the parents of Lee County. I'll now turn it over to Ms. Sinclair to share some additional information about QLIS.
The report displayed is our service duration report. The purpose of this report is to show the duration or amount of time it takes for a service provided. The service duration time drives the forecasted wait time that families get when they join the line. The average time an enrollment specialist spends assisting a family is 22 minutes. Service duration time depends on the type of service being provided and the number of students in the family. For example, a new enrollment with a family of 5 is going to take a significant amount of time compared to enrollment for 1 student. I will turn the presentation back to Soretta to share some enrollment data.
So in the enrollment department, as Dr. Bernier said, our primary job is to do registrations and re-enrollments of students. In addition, we enroll students into Lee Virtual School. We re-enroll students who are leaving the Department of Juvenile Justice. We re-enroll our students from Success Academy. We enroll all of our pre-K students with exceptional student education that are in self-contained classrooms. We also do re-enrollments for exceptional student education students who have a change in placement. And we provide information to families. We review transcripts. We assist families with custody issues. We update address changes. And we provide assistance to families to set up their Focus Parent Portal. In addition, we work with the parents in the schools when there are issues between the parent and the school. We also provide information to families that are relocating from other counties, states, and countries. The slide displayed is a snapshot of the district's continued growth. The first bar indicates the enrollments in our district school on day 1 of the 2022-2023 school year. The middle bar, the purple bar, is the bar showing the enrollment at the end of this past school year, the 2022-2023 school year. The final bar is the number of students that were sitting in our classroom on September the 1st, 2023. For the 2023-2024 school year, we have 90,276. That's an increase of 2,007 students since the end of the prior school year, and an increase of 7,320 students from the last school year to present. And we're still enrolling students every day. The next slide I want to provide is some information about our Lee Virtual School. Lee Virtual School offers students a flexible, innovative, and customized learning model that supports the students' individual needs. Currently, Lee Virtual School is at the same enrollment for the 2023-2024 school year as it was at the beginning of last school year. I know that sounds a little ironic, but that's what the numbers show. During the 2022-23 school year, the enrollment did decrease slightly during the year, as indicated by the middle graph. Lee Virtual staff work closely with students and parents to ensure student success, and that the staff are very flexible when the student is not being successful in the Lee Virtual environment and needs to move back to the brick and mortar classroom. We communicate with the Lee Virtual staff daily to ensure that students are in the right placement and they are receiving their correct educational needs. The second graph is providing some data for the students that are enrolled part-time with Lee Virtual School. These students have a district school of enrollment, a brick and mortar school, but they're taking classes through Lee Virtual School. As you can see from the graph, we have a lot of students enrolling in part-time, and this is a huge increase from where we were at the end of last year. Some reasons this is occurring is that the students can take courses that are not offered at their school. They can also work ahead to get an early graduation, and they can meet the state of Florida's requirement for a virtual school course. Additionally, we have many 8th graders who like to take a course now with Lee Virtual School, an elective course, to get that course out of the way for high school so they can take something else at the high school level for an elective. So there are opportunities for our students, and I think an understanding has been a benefit for our families, and they are really seizing on this opportunity. I'm going to turn it back to Ms. Sinclair to talk about exceptional student education.
The information displayed shows the exceptional student education, often referred to as ESE enrollment, which includes gifted and students with disabilities. As you can see, we started the 2022-2023 school year with 15,493 ESE students enrolled. We saw a growth of 342 students during the school year, with 15,835 enrolled on June 6, 2023, the last day of school. We are starting the 2023-2024 school year with 14,769 ESE students enrolled. While this is a lower enrollment compared to the start of the previous school year, we have seen an increase of 462 students since the first day of school, which exceeds the growth of last year. The Student Enrollment Office enrolls pre-K students with disabilities that need a specialized program. Pre-K enrollments cannot be done online because Focus is unable to distinguish between pre-K students enrolling needing a specialized program and those pre-K students enrolling with Head Start. During the enrollment process, staff will meet with the families to collect and validate registration documents and complete the data entry. And when the student is ready to be assigned to school, staff will come see me for options based on the proximity and the program capacity. When looking at this graph, you will see that we had 190 pre-K students with disabilities enrolled at the start of the 2022-2023 school year, with an increase of 163 pre-K ESE students enrolled during the school year. We are starting the current school year with 497 students enrolled. The continued increase is due to pre-K students moving into our district and students being evaluated and found eligible through our pre-K assessment team between the ages of 3 and 5 years old. Soretta, I will pass it back to you for our next steps.
2023 has been a very busy year for student enrollment because we moved to Focus as our student information system full-time. We've worked through some challenges, and we're very excited about the future. Work is continuing to automate changes with the exceptional student education service delivery models so that we're able to view both the current year IEP and future year individual education plan. Our partners in Application Services Department are also working to automate areas with enrollment, such as enrollment codes and address updates. Our parents all want their siblings together in the same school, but what occurs sometimes is those addresses are not always updated for all the students. To have a linked student, the parent has to have a common address and a common parent. Some of our parents also have two last names, so one student may only have one last name and the other student has two. And with the focus system, that's not linking those students. So again, this is something that our department with Application Services is working on to ensure that we can get past that. We meet weekly to update focus with the Application Services Department and look at some areas for improvement. Also, having a live chat is a tool we want to incorporate with student enrollment. If we could provide real-time responses to parents and continue to strive to improve that customer service, I really think that would be a positive move for our department. Lastly, we are in the final developmental stages of the middle school proximity plan. We're implementing what worked well with the elementary plan, and we're going to make improvements for those deltas with the elementary plan. Our goal is to improve the communication to the parents and provide specific instructions and ensuring that communication is in a timely manner. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. Our department appreciates it, and I'll turn it back over to Dr. Vernier for superintendent comments and board discussion.
Other than to make a final comment, thanking the two directors, the executive director and the other director who presented to us today, and the staff that stepped out, I really don't have anything other to add other than thank you for the work, thank you for the effort, and the two people still seated at the microphone, thank you for all the people that you do represent. And, you know, we joke sometimes about titles. The ladies that all stood up before and walked out, they really are sort of our first impression of our school district. And I have to thank the executive director, Ralph, for her effort in helping them to understand that. And despite the fact that they may get the same question 35 times a day, they have to take that 35th customer just like they took the first one. And you know, there are always good days and bad days for all employees and all parents interacting with student enrollment. But we should be very proud of the work that's going on down there and the level of customer service that's risen in just a short period of time under the leadership. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. Board member comments and questions. Ms. Patrica, followed by Ms. Morgan.
Yeah, I just want to follow up. I do have some questions. I want to follow up on what Dr. Bernier just said. We get a lot of emails about student assignment, and they are complaints about the school in which their child was enrolled. It is never a complaint about attitude. It is never a complaint about interactions with the people in your office. I have honestly never, I mean, I don't want to jinx you, so I'll knock on wood, but and the frustrations that you deal with are far beyond anything that I have the capacity to deal with. So I am very, very, very grateful for the first impression that you provide to so many of our students. I clearly remember, you weren't there at the time, but I do clearly remember my first interactions with student assignment, and they were wonderful and a big part of the reason why I moved my family from New York to Florida. So keep up the good work, as difficult as it is. I do have a couple of questions. How many languages are available for the QLIS app? Please.
I don't have that information off the top of my head. I'll ask Director Ralph to respond.
I know that they can see it in Spanish, and I know that they can see it in Haitian Creole and English, of course. But right now, those are all of the languages that are available with the QLIS app that we have implemented.
Okay. It looks like we have 10 on focus. I'm hoping we're trying to increase that number. I know we're a little bit limited because it's not ours. But if we can try to make some kind of a effort to increase the languages available on these frequently used apps by parents, especially with the fact that you've gone online. How long has that been going on? Through Focus, you can apply through Focus. How long has that been going on?
So we went live with Focus right after July the 4th.
That is in my mind, from a customer service perspective, I know it doesn't decrease your work, but from my perspective, so much easier to enroll online, and even easier if it's available in more languages. And then, what do we do if we have a family that comes into the office that speaks a language that is not spoken by one of your staff members? How do we walk them through the application or the enrollment process?
So we're very fortunate. Many of our enrollment specialists are bilingual and trilingual, which is a great plus. And when we are unable to use that, we also have the new service, I believe it's called Language Line, which is available throughout the district. We have yet to have to use that because we've been able to communicate. Oftentimes, we're getting most of our students are speaking different dialects of Spanish. So that's where we're really struggling with that, but our staff are able to communicate enough that we're able to get those students enrolled.
That's awesome. Just as a follow-up, and not right now, Dr. Bernier, are we tracking how often Language Line is used? And if you could provide that in a weekly update, I'd love that. Thank you.
Yes, we are. We'll be happy to provide that an update.
Anything else, Ms. Patrica? Okay, next up, I believe, was Ms. Morgan.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for bringing the staff. That was a great idea, and it really is nice to put a face to the people who are responding to our families. I have to say, what you have brought about since July is just totally transformative for the school district, and thank you for all of your work to get process and delivery to our families online and make everything more accessible. So just an enormous improvement. It's been a long time coming, and I know a lot of work, but wow, I'm just really appreciative of what you've accomplished. Thank you.
Ms. Langford Fleming.
Yes, the frustrations that you all and your staff deal with daily, I'm a parent, so I've had to use student services before to enroll whenever my children were going into kindergarten. And you're right, Ms. Patrica, I've never had a bad, experience behaviorally. So thank you to your staff for that. That's a precedence that comes from leadership. So thank you. I think it is very important to note that you're right. Just because school starts and we get to September or October 2nd does not mean you're done for the year, that there are families continuing to come in. And then in January, you're probably going to start this lovely process all over again, so in a few short months. But my question is, for families who have left the district prior to this being implemented, and are now coming back, coming back from private schools back into our district, are you still finding people showing up the way they once did, where there was a line out the door? Have we been able to communicate to families, new and older families returning this process? How are we letting the public know about this?
So the communications department has a lot of information that's on the district website. There was a big push out for that. It's also on our website for information about it. And when the families come, it is getting better, I will say that.
Okay.
There were a few families during the month of August that expected to wait in line for hours, and I think most were significantly pleased that they could join the line or make an appointment, and then they can leave and come back. We are working through QLIS, just like we are working through Focus. There have been some learning curves with it, but it has been a great improvement, and I do want to give kudos. The QLIS system was Dr. Bernier, Dr. Spiro, Dr. Ramirez. It was a team effort in getting this in. We knew we needed to do something. We heard the concerns, but we've all worked together to make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you. That's all.
Ms. Jordan?
Thank you, and I think you always do an amazing job. And I was really excited to see it was really women power out there. So thank you for that. I think people are used to the idea of using like a similar QLIS when you go to parks or wherever you go, and using that. So I think this is a great tool for us. My question was, though, I seen the ESE and the numbers on that. Do we change that number, or how often is that changed once the child is in school and they're tested? When do we go back and change that number, or what that looks like? Or is it just when they're enrolled? Because once they're in school, they could be tested for.
Right. The data that Director Ralph is providing to you does not come from specifically the QLIS system. That comes from Focus. So as a student's IEP is updated or changed, that will automatically reflect in the numbers that are presented to you.
Okay.
The Focus data, because that's where registration is truly conducted and where the tracking of student data is actually resides. The Focus system provides that information to us.
Okay, so that number will fluctuate. Thank you for that. And then I was amazed that the part-time for 904 for virtual, and that, I guess, does the same thing, changes as needed, the numbers on that?
The numbers from student enrollment also come from, from the Florida virtual also come from the Focus, because as students register and then actually get scheduled, that's how we know how many students we have. Those numbers are on the rise, but for a district our size, and speaking with the principal, we have to continue to grow our program both in full-time, which I want to be clear to the community, we understand that full-time virtual is not for every student. For some students, it is a great opportunity. For others, it would represent a serious challenge, as we learned through being in different places during the same pandemic. However, the part-time enrollment is really an area which I think is an aspect that we should pay attention to, and we will continue to report back to you on, because part-time enrollment talks about the health and the offerings, and whether our students who are looking to accelerate, tying back to other presentations you've seen before, this gives students opportunity in their schedules as they move into high school to have high school credit completed, also to continue to progress through high school with completing coursework that they can do online, freeing up their schedule their junior and senior year, internships, externships, career opportunities, specific dual enrollment opportunities. And again, you'll see as the part-time enrollment rises at our virtual school, you should see a correlation to the number of students completing advanced coursework, whether that be ACE, Cambridge, AP, IB, or getting their AAs. So those are connected to each other because one creates the gateway for the other.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And thank you.
Anybody else? Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer a comment based on something Dr. Bernier just said. When my son was out of school due to an injury, what I learned is that the amount of time that he needed to engage with a teacher was minimal, and that he could take on a lot more than what he was getting in a traditional setting. And I think that really publicizing some of these opportunities for kids to add additional coursework would perhaps offset some of that boredom aspect for the kids who are high achievers and are frustrated by the pace of learning in a traditional setting. So just offering that personal observation. Thank you.
Anybody else? Ms. Giovanelli?
I just want to say thank you. This presentation was great. I'm excited about the QLIS situation, because I saw the improvement and the changes just in this short period of time this year. I think alone in just some of the emails that we received, and then y'all really, you're always on it. Like, I think in the middle of, I don't know that you sleep from like July or June to August or September maybe. I think maybe you're sleeping now, I hope. So it's October. So thank you.
Okay, I have a question, and not for now, it's a data question actually. Usually in the Lee County School District right now, we don't see numbers go down for anything. I noticed that the ESE education enrollment went down a bit. I'm wondering if that's maybe related to HB1, and just seeing if we can get a follow-up on that. I was just curious because it's the only numbers that I've noticed on that. I'll ask that for Dr. Mayer if you could follow up.
Mr. Chair, we'll take a look at that trend and why will try to examine why we think that trend may be occurring. I don't necessarily believe it's necessary students leaving the system, but again, I'd have to, because our enrollment continues to rise. So we'll have to take a look and try to examine why those numbers are trending the way that they are.
Okay, with just a curiosity. Thank you. I don't have anything else. Thank you so much for your hard work. I say that also as a parent. Thank you. Next up on the agenda, item B4, hurricane recovery. One-year board update.
Mr. Chair and board members, this was a specific request of board members related to providing some information 1 year later where we are in terms of an update related to our work. I'm not going to steal the news of this committee. I know that in my short absence while I was out of town, we got a great award from the legislative appropriation for LAP, which is money specifically set aside to help a district deal with its hurricane expenses. Additionally, we also have some dollars that we know the legislature specifically set aside for the school district of Lee County. We continue to move forward. I want to thank all of you as well as members of staff who were just about everywhere on the day of the event 1 year later. And I think it's really important for us to recognize not only that we are in the process of rebuilding and this community is going to come back stronger than ever, but I do think the 150 plus who perished, I do really appreciate the fact that just about every speaker spoke to that as well. We have to consider the 28th of September a 1 year metric, but it also is also a sense of a memorial to those individuals who were not with us post-storm and whose families and loved ones are still grieving. At this time, I will turn it over to our team and have them introduce themselves and present on Hurricane Ian recovery 1 year later.
Good afternoon, Board. Thank you for having us here today to go over this important information following the 1 year anniversary of the impact of Hurricane Ian. First, we're all in this together, and as we attempted to list all of the major players who came forward and supported our district, our students, our community, the list was long, and we feared we might not get everyone on it. So our intent there is to absolutely recognize all of our community partners and other agencies that supported our recovery, and the consultants in particular that were brought on specifically for this initiative were AECOM and Answer Advisory Services, who have helped in the project management area with our maintenance teams, the Imperium Consulting Group, who have helped with our insurance recovery and FEMA claims, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Mr. Jeff Wagner, who was brought on to help lead our recovery efforts. So those were key consultants. There are many. Those are the most notable, and I just wanted to recognize them. Dr. B?
I just want you to and we're not going to go down the list, but we all know how deeply indebted we are to our local legislative delegation and their help and support, but also the work of Governor DeSantis and the First Lady related not only to them signing the legislation that our legislators passed, but also the hard work of the First Lady related to recovery and dollars that were sent to our foundation in order to help individuals recover. You know, the interesting part of this is it's all about a partnership. It's all about the opportunity to take care of each other, and in the course of this disaster and this event, we found out more about our family and our friends, and I think we weren't even sure. I think one of the best lines I heard at the various events on Thursday was, strangers became neighbors. Neighbors became friends. And the same thing occurred for us with our local school districts and school districts from across this state, and our local school boards as well. I know school board members reached out to all of you as well. Again, we fear greatly that we have left somebody out of a list. Lists like this are dangerous. We have. Please email me directly, and we will make sure the next time we do this that we include other individuals as well. But just really wanted to take the opportunity to just look at the different organizations that are here. I don't know where we would be without the Florida Department of Emergency Management, our foundation, and the list just goes on and on and on. The United Way, while not everybody's named specifically, we tried to create large buckets where people would know who they are and that they belong they belong on this list, and how appreciative we are of their support. Ms. Millay?
Okay, today's agenda, we're going to go through the physical damages and recovery that we've realized, the financial impact and our recovery from that, and have a focus on our people, our emotional and mental health, and how we're recovering from that as well. This presentation was advertised a week ago in advance of this meeting. We had some big news come in, so over the weekend we updated the slides with the little yellow icon. So anywhere you see that, that's news to share, and we're excited to share it with you. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so wanted to take a second to introduce those presenting with me. Dr. Tony Dent-McNair is the Assistant Director of Maintenance Services.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Joseph Muscali, and you guys need to turn your red buttons on there, from Imperium Consulting Group. Yep, push and hold.
Yep. Thanks, Susan. Joseph Muscali with Imperium.
And Kip Nelson, also with Imperium.
Thank you, Susan and board.
All right, so we'll jump right in to the physical damages and recovery, and Dr. Tony Dent-McNair will lead that discussion.
Thank you, Susan. Good afternoon. In celebration of the one-year anniversary of Hurricane Ian and its recovery efforts as it relates to the damages sustained, I am pleased to share an overview of the progress made during the last year, as well as discuss our continued steps as we move forward to 100% completion of this effort. A total of 2,317 service requests were submitted due to Hurricane Ian damage. As of September 22nd, when this data was submitted, we had completed a total of 1,713 repairs throughout the district, leaving 604 currently in progress. As advancements are being made daily, however, I am happy to report that as of last Friday, September 29th, an additional 11 repair requests were completed, thus reducing the total number of outstanding repair items to 593. This means that we have now completed over 74% of all Hurricane Ian-related repairs. 8 sites are 100% complete, with an additional 4 sites at 90% or higher. The diagram in the lower right-hand corner provides an interesting view of the quantity of damage sustained at each campus and amount of work currently in progress. The larger circles represent campuses with larger repair scopes, like you can see Sanibel there off on the island to your left. And the smaller circles represent sites with lesser damage. Similar to this dashboard, which represents comprehensive damages, like dashboards for each school have also been created and are distributed to each school bi-monthly. Hurricane damage was sustained in some measure throughout all district sites. The most commonly affected areas, and thus the majority of our recovery effort, has been directed towards the restoration of campus roofs, drywall, flooring, ceiling tiles, canopies, sunshades, athletic fields, and fencing. Although prioritization of securing building envelopes, restoring interior learning environments, and guaranteeing student safety has been paramount, all hurricane damages have been captured at this point and assigned to vendors for completion. We are managing these repairs with a goal of full completion by the end of 2023, with the exception of the replacement of the new Hector A. Cafferata Jr. as a K-8 and some roof repairs, which have been initiated, but due to longer processes and material lead times may not yet be completed by our goal. Knowing that post-COVID, material procurement and vendor bandwidth had become more challenging, we proactively implemented additional processes to secure piggyback contracts and utilize subcontractors and hard bids to expand capacity and in order to help mitigate those foreseeable issues and keep all projects on track. The data that you see on this bar graph separates the hurricane-related repair work by area of concern. Blue represents the percentage of work across the district that has been completed in that area. Orange signifies that work is currently in progress, meaning work crews are actively on sites conducting their repairs. The red outlines at the tops of each column signifies those projects that are still in the pre-construction phase. Examples in this classification include projects where engineering reports still might be finalized, materials could be on order, walkway covers are being fabricated but not yet installed, etc. This top percentage does not mean that work has not yet started, but signifies that preliminary work is still being accomplished in preparation for the active installation work to come. I am proud to report that our highest completion rates do correspond to our commitment to prioritize comfortable and safe learning environments, with the top 4 being in the areas of interiors, electrical, HVAC, and exteriors. I know I did mention that securing the building envelope has been of the highest priority, so you may be wondering why the completion rate for roof repairs is so much lower than those of similar concern. These are complex roofing projects and have been approached through a multi-phased process. First, we provided temporary repairs to our damaged roofs to stop any potential water intrusion and to secure our envelopes until the full extent of the damages could be captured and then reported. Then, to ensure compliance and best method for roof repair, we utilized district contracted architects and engineers to provide expert advisement as to course of action and recommended remedy for reconstruction or replacement of those roofs. A&E firm involvement for roof repairs, though, does take a little more time than direct repairs in that multiple studies are conducted, best methods for replacements are researched, new drawings and specifications are written, etc. I am happy to report that while drawings and specs typically take about a year to complete, though, we have successfully achieved a 3-week turnaround for these materials in efforts to help expedite these actual repairs. And although mitigative efforts were implemented, supply chain issues for roofing materials still have been a factor, contributing to the extension of time needed to complete these repairs. So depending upon the materials needed, ETA for supplies has been running between 6 to 24 weeks, with the longer lead times typically being for metals for fabrication of roof panels, gutters, fascia, and the like. So for purposes of the presented bar graph, while the blue denotes the 50% of roof work that has been completed and 16% are actively being repaired, the 27% in the box above is indicative of the current design phase or pre-construction status. It does not mean that they've not yet to begin any work on these projects. The same holds true for all the other categories listed. Of all of our campuses, the most severely impacted sites were Hector A. Cafferata Jr. Elementary School, Fort Myers Beach Elementary School, and the Sanibel School. Hector Cafferata was damaged beyond repair due to the roof material being blown off from the structure, which allowed water to infiltrate the entirety of the building, causing catastrophic losses to building interiors, utility systems, and furnishings. Fort Myers Beach Elementary also sustained cataclysmic damages resulting from severe coastal water flooding throughout the lower one-story buildings of the school. The Sanibel School similarly flooded and sustained extensive damages due to the cascading effects of the moisture from the standing water. But through thorough examinations, engineering assessments, and community input, plans to restore or replace all 3 campuses were enacted. In response to the growing capacity in the West Zone, as well as the now current need to permanently house the students at the former Hector A. Cafferata Elementary School, the decision was made to build an existing K-8 prototype at a separate district-owned location in order to appropriately address both issues. This new replacement facility will be built with the plan to open in 2025 for the start of the FY26 school year. At Fort Myers Beach Elementary School, all of the interior contents, utilities, and mechanical equipment in the one-story buildings were in disrepair due to the significant water intrusion and were demolished. The historic two-story building, however, has been remediated and is currently being renovated with construction scheduled for completion next month, so that's exciting. The Sanibel School, though significantly damaged, was found to be structurally sound with most of the major utilities intact. As such, the school was remediated and all interior furnishings restored, thus allowing the students to return to their classrooms earlier this year. These next couple of slides give examples of some of the great work accomplished by the maintenance department as well as the hurricane recovery team throughout this past year. So I want to give them a great kudos for all the work that they've been doing. One of the most highly damaged roofs was what you see in the picture here. It was located at Calusa Middle School. This modified bitumen roof was damaged all the way down to its substrate. But I am happy to share, however, that this replacement was recently completed, almost a full month ahead of schedule. Additional examples of completed repairs shown include the replacement of approximately 10,000 square feet of flooring at Fort Myers Technical Center and the replacement of the shared gym floor at Lexington Middle School and the Waxahachie Recreation Center, complete with the newly painted Lynx mascot. Shown in the photo are the actual phys ed teachers kissing the floor, happy that they can now utilize the gym for their classes and ball games. Thank you, Susan, for taking that picture. As we look forward towards the finish line of complete recovery, we will continue to strategically manage project implementation, prioritizing the protection and restoration of the student learning environment. Roofing projects will also remain a priority, and due to their complexity, are the last major construction trade needed to restore district buildings to pre-storm conditions. To keep stakeholders informed of our progress, we will continue to provide weekly schedules for the major repair work at the high-impacted schools and offer completion rate statuses for each school's physical damage. We will also continue to collaborate with school administrators and building supervisors to ensure that each service request submitted has been successfully completed. And we will maintain our support of business services and Imperium with data collection and reporting process to aid in our FEMA and insurance reimbursement initiatives. I thank you, and with that I will turn this over to Joseph Mascali to discuss the financial impact and recovery.
Thank you, Dr. Tony, Susan, Dr. Bernier, and the board for having us here this afternoon. It's crazy to think that we last spoke with you all in December. And I have the pleasure of beginning the recovery update on the financial side, where we are a year from the event. When we last met with you all in December, we outlined the stage for this recovery effort, and we coined the acronym of SMART. Our goal was to be strategic, mission-oriented, accurate, resilient, and timely. And I think you'll see that the efforts from the district, maintenance, operation, construction, the hurricane recovery team, the consultants, Dr. Bernier, the Department of Education in the state, some of the folks that we thanked earlier in the presentation, we are on track and we are consistent with the goal and objective that we outlined for you in December. On the slide before you, you'll see our financial losses. This is our rough order of magnitude. Back in October of last year, we put forth an estimate of loss, which at the time there were a number of items and categories that were to be determined. We just didn't know what the impacts were going to be. Today, we have a little bit more visibility into where we are. I will tell you that these numbers do change. We are constantly evaluating this, especially as the district continues to make decisions operationally with respect to its recovery. Back in December, we were anticipating a loss around $303 million of total financial impacts for the district. Today, we're a little bit less than that at $277 million, and I'll explain some of the decisions that have been made in accordance with our goal of being smart with this recovery effort that has changed some of those numbers and why. The main factors for reducing this rough order of magnitude is the district's response to the emergency remediation efforts to mitigate further damage. It's easy to look back a year later and sometimes forget those decisions that were made early on by the district, but the district was extraordinarily proactive in its decision-making, which not only got the students and the community back into the schools, but also reduced our overall impacts and mitigated further damage. The district has also, has it always been committed to local vendors decided to rely on its trusted local vendors that it's been working with and partnering for a number of years to perform those repairs, which greatly reduced the cost for the district. The district also mobilized a small army to perform the repairs as well immediately following the event, again bringing down the costs. And in some cases, our estimates were just not in accordance with the actual expenses that have been incurred to date. The major categories of loss that make up our now refined rough order of magnitude of $277 million pertains to property damage at roughly $142 million, the Hector Cafferata rebuild going from a K through 5 to a K through 8 facility, the financial losses that were suffered by the district as a result of the event, contents, vehicles, and equipment, and then the temporary facility also at Hector Cafferata to resume normal operations as best as we could for the students of Hector Cafferata. Next slide, please. This slide has a lot of detail on it, so I'm going to try to explain it as simply as possible, and if there are any questions, I'll take those after the presentation. This is our current projection of funding. This is our layer cake graph, as we call it. This is adjusted in accordance with the rough order of magnitude, and it gives some visibility to the district as to where we're anticipating costs to fall, whether that be costs that the district will ultimately be responsible, FEMA, the state, or our insurance carrier. So I'll walk you through the list accordingly. So there are some expenses that are simply not covered in the insurance policy or reimbursable under the FEMA Public Assistance Program. These are your tax revenue losses. We did submit a claim up to the policy limit for tax revenue loss under the insurance policy, and that is going to be part of the next advance payment, which I'll talk about in a later slide. And then we, as a district, made the decision to expand the footprint for Hector Cafferata. So again, thinking about mission-oriented recovery, the district saw an opportunity to take the Hector Cafferata and expand it to be more conducive to its overall mission and its student body. So there are some out-of-pocket investments by the district with respect to this recovery. We did receive a capital appropriation of $17.5 million from the state. You will hear the state in a number of different layers of this chart. They have been an unbelievable supporter of the school district. They have allocated $17.5 million for non-FEMA related Hurricane Ian capital expenses. So this is truly accretive to the recovery. The county has reimbursed the district over $1.2 million with respect to the emergency shelter operations. This is new for the district. Previously for Hurricane Irma, this was not something that was reimbursed. So credit to Dr. Bernier and the executive team for establishing very strong communication lines with the county to recover some of those expenses that were incurred. The state typically will pay for half of the cost share burden following a major disaster where there's FEMA public assistance eligibility. For this disaster, they're actually going to assume the entire cost share. They passed the SB4 waiver program, so that we have adjusted our calculations here, showing again another investment by the state. That light orange layer pertains to what we are anticipating FEMA to pay us based upon our current rough order of magnitude. FEMA is typically the payer of last resort. First comes insurance, which I'll get to next. And right now, the current cost share is 75 cents on the dollar. We are anticipating that to increase to 90 cents on the dollar, which will just change the proration between the state's layer and FEMA's layer. As Dr. Bernier announced earlier in the presentation, last Friday, we got notice of an award again from the state through the Legislative Appropriations Program, or LAP. The district was awarded $51 million, which is tied for the highest allocation for this program. The state set aside $350 million for public entities impacted from Hurricanes Ian and Nicole, and the district was tied for the largest allocation of $51 million. And this award is essentially an advance on what the state anticipates FEMA to pay us. Now, it's not the entirety of this FEMA layer, but it's a start in a forward direction. The state has acknowledged that permanent work projects weren't moving through the FEMA queues as fast as they would have liked them to see it. So they decided to make an investment, and the district submitted over 47 applications totaling $147 million of requests. And again, we received $51 million to help finance the permanent repair projects that, again, have already started, as Dr. Tony outlined. The last two layers are our insurance. We continue to anticipate policy limits with respect to our commercial insurance policy. That's $75 million. And we're slowly completing the NFIP claim for our flooded campuses, those being Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, and Lexington Middle School. And we're just waiting on a final few checks, and to date, we've collected $4.4 million. Next slide, please. So cash flow overview. This chart is really designed to show how, from a funding perspective, as we communicated in December, our challenge is to try to keep pace with the district, right? The district is moving forward with its repair and with its recovery, and our goal is to try to make sure that the funds are coming in slowly behind the repair efforts. To date, we've received over $135 million of committed funds. I have already touched on some of these entities that have provided some funding commitments, those being insurance, FEMA, the county, the capital appropriation by the state, and this recent award of $51 million. So in total, $135 million has been funded inside of a year of this recovery effort. What have we received? What's in the bank account? In total, we've received $56.8 million, a combination of insurance, FEMA, and again, reimbursement from the county. And what is the district encumbered? What has it spent? The district to date has encumbered $100 million with respect to its repair and this recovery. So in terms of funding committed, we have about a $35 million windfall that we will anticipate collecting a majority of that inside of this calendar year. What have we expended? As of this report, we've expended $53.8 million, meaning that the cash that we've received in our accounts at $56.8 million has yielded a $3 million windfall. So inside of a year, we've been able to keep pace with the district. I can't promise that forever, but so far so good, and we're making sure that our team is constantly looking at opportunities to maintain that pace with the district. Next slide, please. So I'm going to touch on the insurance claim status, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Nelson, who will go through the FEMA update. But with respect to the insurance claim, as I mentioned, there are really two silos for the insurance claim recovery, our flood insurance and our commercial property insurance. As I mentioned with the NFIP, we are almost complete with our flood claims. We're just waiting on a few checks, so that should be resolved in the next 60 to 90 days. On our property insurance side, where we have $75 million of limits, we've received to date $40.3 million of payments. We are anticipating another 9.7 to be paid inside of this calendar year. We will be through the first two layers of the policy, so $50 million, and we continue to work with the insurance adjuster and his team on the final $25 million layer. Overall, it's been a very extraordinary effort in inspecting over 1,000 buildings at 88 campuses. We've been working extraordinarily close with the insurance adjustment team and our adjuster, Rick Mullen, and his building consultants, J.S. Held. We've collaborated with them to develop an appropriate rough order of magnitude with respect to your insurance claims so that the market, your 14 insurance carriers are aware of this loss and the magnitude and the attention that they need to give the district with respect to its recovery. And we continue to work with them to advocate on the district's behalf to make sure that we're synchronized with respect to the damages so that we're all on the same page with respect to the district's loss. And this collaborative relationship continues. We meet bi-weekly, and we're very much in touch to move this project forward for the district's recovery effort. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kip Nelson to talk about the FEMA claim status. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. As you can see on the slide, FEMA likes to organize their projects and funding recovery program through their own administrative process. It is administratively intense, but it is navigable. They have defined damage to the district in 1,046 different sites, slightly differently defined than our own internal processes through the maintenance department and through the hurricane recovery team. They have identified roughly 305 projects, some small, some large, and some for both emergency work, which is temporary in nature, like our temporary facility at Hector Cafferata, or debris pickup, whenever we picked up vegetative debris and trash from sites, and then permanent work, which is the restoration of facilities and buildings. As you can see, we've got all types of projects in the permanent work, roofing, all of the types of categories that Dr. Tony referred to earlier. So far, we have received approximately $10.9 million in emergency work funding from FEMA as it's winding its way through the process, and we have yet to receive any funding on the permanent work side. Some of that is due to FEMA facing multiple emergencies and disasters throughout the country. That has put a strain on their funding mechanism. It's referred to as the as the Disaster Relief Fund. So we heard news this morning that due to the continuing resolution that Congress just passed, that they are now back to the table and ready to fund projects that were on hold due to that funding restraint for the last couple of months. So next slide, please. So we really look, there's some additional funding opportunities besides our two primary funding sources, our two primary being the FEMA Public Assistance Program and insurance funding. So the first being hazard mitigation, called 406 in FEMA nomenclature, doesn't really mean very much, but hazard mitigation is really additional measures to protect your assets from being harmed again in a similar type disaster. So it's really building back better and protecting the federal investment and the district investment in its assets. As Joe alluded to earlier, there's support from the state through the Legislative Appropriations Program, which we've recently seen some very good news and success with. There is the increased participation from the state in offsetting what they call the cost share. So much like insurance has a deductible where they ask you to have some skin in the game, FEMA also asks you to have some skin in the game, and that's called a cost share. That's what does not come from the federal government. So the state is supporting us in that non-federal contribution. And then finally, our team is extensively researching other opportunities through other federal agencies and through private nonprofits to do supplemental funding for other types of damages beyond just mere physical damages to facilities and structures. So next slide, please. So in addition to the standard FEMA PA program, which restores damages from the disaster and insurance, which also does the same thing, there are two other programs which allow us to build back even better, right? So there's another mitigation program called the HMGP program, which again helps us either build new assets or protect existing assets from future types of harm, right? And then there is the Resilient Lee, or CDBG-DR. That's a long string of letters that people often have a hard time pronouncing or remembering. The Lee County Board of County Commissioners has formed a long-term recovery committee. They have asked nearly every public entity in the county to participate. I know some of you have been asked for input. I expect over the long term you'll be asked for more input, and that will be a deliberative process. Both of these programs are really just kicking off, right? So where we have been actively working on negotiating and settling our insurance claim and our FEMA public assistance claim, these two programs are at their infancy and will continue to develop in the near future. So With that, a little bit, so broadly speaking, again, our major programs for recovery funding are insurance and FEMA. Every program has a different administrative burden, but we are identifying milestones in each program and working proactively with the stakeholders in each program to develop a very action-oriented, mission-oriented plan and schedule to proactively pursue maximizing funding in each recovery bucket of funding, if you will. So we have a plan for insurance and FEMA. We can talk a little bit more about that. We've decided, we articulated some specific steps here. Don't want to have to read slides to everybody and bore them to death, but you see we are moving forward with each program with some alacrity and diligence. So with that, turn it over to Susan.
Thank you. Thank you, Kip. One of the things that we wanted to make sure is that we touched on the personal recovery of our students, staff, and community. And with that, our communications department led the development of a wonderful documentary on the Hurricane Ian recovery. And I hope that you might have had the opportunity to view that. We are not going to show the whole presentation. However, we did want to show you kind of the trailer for the communications demo. So it looks like I'm having a problem launching this. Let's see.
I think you have to do control.
Yep, not a shift. Sorry about that. Maybe not. Can I get some help from communications to launch? Okay, sorry about the delay here. Let's see. All right, so we could either skip that or give me a minute to pull it up. Dr. B, what's your preference?
It's really up to the pleasure of the board. We can always come back to it if the comms team could be ready on the backside.
Great, maybe we could take questions or comments on the great work that this team has pulled together to present.
Susan, you want me to help you a little?
So just as a quick wrap up, and so this is one of the heavy lifts that you asked for, right? You asked for a more full workshop, so you're getting it. So when we talked in the one-on-ones about, I do want some feedback towards the end of this in our next one-on-ones about the size of this. But there's a couple of things that we need to just say, and we need to say publicly. First of all, I need to thank everyone seated at that table, and there are also some individuals seated in seats here. Barbara Cedeno is here. Frederick Ross is here. Larry Stevens, our new COO, is here. They have another part of all of this work. And thank you to Susan Millay for recognizing the efforts of Jeff Wagner, who came as a personal favor. And then, unfortunately, we eventually had to send him home. But we appreciate everybody's effort to get us where we are. I think the most important thing for us to think about is we're focused on all repairs. As you looked at some of the data, not all work orders are the same. Some are for some very big items and they take longer time to close out. Some of them are for smaller repairs that are more easily done. I think the other thing that I think we need to make sure is that we allow people who are still sitting in a classroom that may be missing a microwave or a stove for their home ec class. We have not forgotten you. There are processes we need to follow, as well as a big ticket item such as the tear down of the former Hector Caffaretta building. We are still waiting for a final sign off. We make progress on it about every 2 weeks with FEMA. We're getting very, very close for their opportunity for you potentially to be out there. I believe it was Board Member Jordan who was involved with a bulldozer or something at Franklin Park Elementary. Not sure I can promise you that same opportunity at Hector, but we keep working through those processes. And I think the one thing we heard Thursday, and I think what we have to continue to encourage ourselves about, is we've made fantastic progress. But this is a long-term recovery. FEMA is the last person who will pay us. We still have more work to do with our insurance companies, but we will continue to work with FEMA. Recently, more than a week ago, we set up a conference call. I have to thank not only our local delegation, but the Florida Department of Ed, as well as FDEM, and then we reached out through our federal senators and congressmen to get FEMA on the phone, and not just FEMA on the phone, but some really amazing decision makers from FEMA who agreed to a cadence of meetings so we could continue to work with them. The people on the ground here in Lee County working for FEMA have been phenomenal. It's when the information disappears into the great bureaucracy that is our world that sometimes we were lacking the next avenue to get to a decision maker. And I have to tell you, our federal delegation really stepped up and gave us amazing access. So I think Susan's video has been fixed. We'll show a quick little trailer to the video and then an opportunity for you to ask questions, and we look forward to a deep and rich discussion.
For this community, September 28th is a date that I think we'll always remember.
When I hear Hurricane Ian, I think of resilience.
For the community to come fully back, the schools had to come back.
So we'll encourage the community to go out and look at that documentary. It's easily found on YouTube. I can't tell you how deeply indebted we are to the entire communications team and the individuals, some of our principals and other community members who participated, some of our impacted staff, those who ran shelters and other things. It really is a great overview of what we went through, and some really candid comments from individuals about what we were trying to do at the time, and understand more about our reflection 1 year later. Lastly, I just need to recognize Adam Wright. Adam Wright spearheaded this. He is an amazing cinematographer as far as I can tell. I know they will submit this through whatever avenues they can, because school districts actually compete for awards. This is one of those that will get submitted, and I don't think he'll be mad at me, but I will say when he comes back, and he's due back in a little while, his absence is due to a new addition into his family. So if you've been looking for him, he's on dad duty at the moment, and he'll be back for his accolades at a later time. To the board, Mr. Chair, your questions and our responses.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. Comments, questions, board members? Ms. Morgan.
Well, I'll start because I've sort of been leaning on Dr. Bernier to do this because, you know, reading the documentation that we get every couple weeks is just really difficult to put things in context. So I really appreciate this overview, which is doing it in chunks that I can absorb and retain. So thank you very much for this presentation. It was very helpful to me.
Thank you.
And those are my comments. Thank you.
Others? Mr. Persons, followed by Ms. Jordan.
This is for the superintendent, or were you able to get any figures at how this compared to like Irma? The total damages, how many schools or anything along those lines?
I don't have that information yet. I've made the request. Susan Millay, however, is shaking her head, so I will ask Susan if she has that data. It had not yet made its way all the way to me yet, sir.
So for Hurricane Irma, which was the worst storm in history of Lee County to recover from, we were devastated with a $30 million loss. And then came Ian, and the initial ROM is $300 million. Luckily, it's coming down a little bit to $277 million. However, for comparison to Irma, that gives you that
basically
reflection.
10 times. So.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Jordan, followed by Ms. Morgan.
Thank you very much for this. And I just wanted some clarification. I may have misunderstood what you said, Joseph, I think it was, that made a comment regarding the award of the $51 million. Is it advancement of what FEMA would be paying? It's an investment. So is that $51 million is what we would have to pay back once FEMA pays on that?
We are working on getting a funding agreement from the state. The intention of it was to present what we believe our FEMA claim to be and for them to advance the funds so we can get work started or reimburse the outflow of cash that the district has already outlaid.
Okay.
So we're going to get clarification over the next couple of weeks as to what it is, but right now it's a 0% loan by the state, and we're anticipating them to just apply reductions and payments that would otherwise come in the future through the state from FEMA.
Okay, thank you, because I know that when I heard 51 million, and a lot of people said, oh, the state gave us 51 million. In actuality, they did give it to us. However, there are strings tied to that, and that's what I heard. That's why I wanted that clarification. So thank you for that.
Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, and the point I wanted to make, piggybacking off what Chairperson said, so it was 30 million, 75% recovery thus far from Irma, 10 times that, 300 million, the initial cost or estimate of cost for Ian, and they're talking a 90% recovery, potentially, because of the work that was done by staff. The work that was done by people in the community based on what they learned from Irma, how to document, and then coming in quickly and doing all of the work necessary to get remediation done and prepare things for FEMA on site. So just saying that kudos to everyone on staff who was involved in doing the documentary work, and then also since then, doing the claims, following up, et cetera. I think that's an extraordinary difference. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Ms. Patrica, followed by Ms. Juvenelli.
So I think what we fail to recognize here is that the work that's being done is being done on top of our regular everyday responsibilities. And when I say ours, I mean yours. That's across the board. The people who are sitting here and the people who are in maintenance and the people across the district who have just done work that I'm exhausted hearing about it, never mind doing it. So my appreciation, there really aren't words to express my appreciation. Thank you very much. I think that Irma was a learning experience for us in terms of the bureaucracy that is our federal government. You said it's our world. It's really our government in general. I'd like to think that it's not our world, but I do have a question. Slide 16. The cost of Hector Cafferata portables. Is there any reimbursement for those specifically? I didn't see that in there.
It's not specifically called out in this chart, but there is reimbursement through the insurance policy, and anything not recovered in the insurance policy will fall to FEMA.
All right, because I remember when we built that was a huge leap of faith, and it was one of the more difficult decisions I had made to fund that, not knowing whether that money was going to come back to us. When you talk about roofs, you said it almost apologetically, like we still have 27% left to go, but as you drive through the community, you see that there are still a lot of people whose homes don't have permanent roofs on them. So I think that the recovery, the speed of the recovery is understandable, and actually amazing given the condition that so many people are still in personally in their own personal recovery. So don't be apologetic about the work you're doing. I appreciate the explanation, but it's certainly an apologetic tone was not at all required. And then finally, Adam Wright, you mentioned him, and I met with Mr. Guzman last week, and we talked about communications and how to better engage families, and I can't think of a better way to do it than to make Adam more busy because the things that he puts out are so engaging and people want to watch them. And I did see this video on our Facebook page, and there was not one negative comment. How often do you see a post on a public education social media site where there are no negative comments? I just think that kind of material hopefully will get our community, get our community more engaged. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Ms. Juvenelli?
Thank you. wow, I just want to say thank you. This is a huge difference from the whole experience with Ian versus Irma, and that was one of the, so thank you, chairpersons, for bringing that up, because that was one of the things that I was concerned about. When do we expect kind of completion of this? I think that, I know that it might be, I know you don't have a crystal ball, because with FEMA you need probably a crystal ball and then a lot more time. But anyways, I just was curious, when do you think the roof situation's going to be, the roofs are all going to be completed and whatnot, and I'm just curious. Thank you.
So that's a great class of clarification, Ms. Giovanelli. Let's go down the line. I think we have some target dates regarding the repairs and when we believe things like roofs could be done. But I think it's also important for the board to know and for the public to know there are some approaching deadlines regarding FEMA and the work that we're doing in order to meet those deadlines and ensure that we're in the best possible place for reimbursement. So if we can start with facilities and construction and the work orders.
Yes, that is correct. We are planning, and our goal target date is the end of December for the major roofs to be done. There will be some roofs, again, as I mentioned, due to some issues with ETAs for material purchase and such like that, that will linger into the early part of 2024, but we are working to expedite all the repairs as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
With respect to insurance, our goal, as presented, is to settle the claim by next summer. And with FEMA, we've learned through Hurricane Irma, we this summer had the closeout of the FEMA projects from Hurricane Irma from 6 years ago, and we continue to have projects from Hurricane Irma audited from the state before we receive reimbursement. So Irma was a 6-year recovery, and we're very hopeful that this will be a shorter recovery.
So it looks like that. To me, that's what I see it to be, a shorter recovery as well. And I actually have to say that I think a lot of it has to do with the leadership of the superintendent and getting the right people here quickly, expeditiously, and your leadership really, I think, is proving this just in this presentation. So I just want to thank you, Dr. Bernier. Thank you.
Anybody else? Ms. Langford Fleming.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again for all your efforts. I mean, when you go back to the beginning of this presentation, you talked about a list and trying to make sure that you got everybody on the list, and I think that would almost be impossible because so many people came together to make this happen, not only in maintenance and in your department. Dr. Bernier, your efforts are incredibly appreciated along with your staff, and I would be remiss if I didn't say the efforts of our teachers and our admin trying to get back into their classrooms in 14 days, and some of them having wet, soggy books and maybe a wet rug, and they still did it, and they were like, we just want our kids back in our classrooms. So if we look back from a year from now, I'm amazed at all that's happened. And if you go to slide 21, it talked about resilience and the development committee. This is what happens when a community comes together and everyone gets their sort of egos out of their way, and we're all putting our best efforts forward, and we're coming together as a team with our county commissioners and our school board and our superintendents and the other directors. I know that the 51 is somewhat of a loan, but I am very appreciative of the legislative efforts that were done to be able to get these projects going and done as quickly as possible so the roofs can be done in early 2024. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. Slide 17, please. Okay, thank you. I believe this would be for Imperium. I believe I asked this question in December. We're at, for our policy limit, 75 million. You said we're around 50 million. Realistically, how close do you think we'd get to that 75 million?
All indications with the adjustment team is that we will continue to get towards that limit. So we're just taking it layer by layer, and our adjuster is working with the insurance market to make sure that his reports make it through. So as we look at each advance payment that's forthcoming, we're already starting on the next payment. But right now, we continue to hold $75 million in anticipation of reimbursement from the insurance carriers.
Okay, thank you. The other just comment, and I think this came up, in regards to FEMA, it looks like we had a strong start to it, and it kind of tailed off a bit. I know things are very unpredictable, as Dr. Bernier said, and you guys. So do we think we're going to start getting back on the right track with FEMA?
So really, the FEMA funding came from one project award. So the debris removal initiative for our school district exclusively was $20 million. $20 million of debris was removed from our property, and FEMA has reimbursed us the first half of that. So we continue to get work on the reimbursement for the second half, and all of the other projects which are moving through the FEMA system. And so really that 10.9 number is from one project and then a couple $100,000 from another one. So as Dr. Bernier alluded to, we've had great conversations with FEMA leadership, identified a couple of obstacles, and we're in progress for knocking them down and moving on.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to echo the rest of the board and thank you for everyone in the district and our outside parties, to the local delegation, to the governor. Thank you for everyone for your help. It's appreciated. Thank you, Dr. Bernier, for your leadership. I will make a quick comment. You talked about having these briefings and workshops a bit heavier. I know I'm on board with that. Probably need a few more minutes on this one. I don't know how my fellow board members feel, but I'm good with it. So, thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chair, can I just say one quick thing? I appreciate all the board members' comments directed at me. There's staff gathered in this room, and there's staff listening. None of this gets done just by one person. Deeply indebted to the leadership of a chief of staff who at the time said, you know what we need? Somebody's got to be a driver. We've got to drive. And I remember Michael in the conference room telling the team that his personality wasn't going to change. He was still going to be a nice person. But his role for me was to be the driver to make sure things got done. And I just watched staff respond. But to Ms. Langford's point, none of this gets done without countless other people. And just know, and we heard it a lot on Thursday, it's a long recovery back. But you continue to see on Thursday local, state, and federal commitment to when the news cameras go away, and it's 1 year later, there are still some people in very important positions that are still looking out for all of the people impacted by Hurricane Ian, and thankful to those individuals for their support, and yours as well as board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Thank you, everyone. Next up on the agenda is item B5, policy review. That will be with Attorney Dupree Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we have 5 minutes to a 5-minute recess, please?
Sure. Let's take a 5-minute recess. Thank you. Do we know if we're live streaming right now?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, we're resuming the briefing today. We are now on to item B5, policy review with Attorney Dupree Bruno.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. With me today is Ms. Benny Brophy, and we're going to go through any of the policies that the board would like to review. This is your first reading. You've already been pre-briefed, but there is one policy that I do want to bring to the board's attention, which is 9140, Citizens Advisory Committees. I have attended all of the Citizen Advisory Committee meetings, and a common theme has come up with regards to the limit of 2 absences before you are actually removed from the committee. Many of the committees requested that they have the same leniency that the board has to participate in a meeting if they are ill, or if they have a family member who is ill, or if they are traveling. So we would like to recommend that we add that language under membership, section D.
Okay. Board members, I know I've encountered this the same in my, I want to say CSI, I apologize, strategic. We'll keep it a CSI for a moment. I can't remember the new name. My apologies. What are your thoughts, fellow board members, on making that change? Anybody against making that change? Attorney Dupree Bruno, do you have your guidance on that policy?
Thank you. And there's one other thing I wanted to bring up to the board. It's under construction. In the old policy, and we kept it in the new policy, there was one member of the Fire Chiefs Association who was going to be appointed. I have found out that we actually have never done that. So we would like to remove that section from the Construction Advisory Committee.
Any objection from anyone here in that removal? Ms. Patrica?
I don't object, but I'm looking down. It should be strategic planning and accountability. Below that, E.
Okay, we'll change that.
Ms. Warning?
Yeah, and I have a comment back to where you are in 9140. In my committee, Finance Advisory, they actually took a motion and a vote to appeal to the board to go to allow both in-person and hybrid. So I'm throwing it out there. The motion was made, a recommendation has been made to the board. This doesn't go to staff, this comes to us. So we can discuss it now while we're doing the policy review, or discuss it at a later time, but there was a lot that was said about this, a lot of concern about not being able to do one of the both.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could just to elaborate as to what Ms. Morgan said, I would appreciate if we have the discussion now so that we can revise if the board wants to revise. The policy now currently reads that members can meet in person or they can meet virtually. There is no hybrid option in that, in the policy, and I believe that's what Mrs. Morgan is asking for. They want to be able to meet in person and also virtually for those who want to participate virtually.
And just to clarify, this is separate from what we just did in regards to making hybrid for if you're sick or out of town on business, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Comments, questions, board? Ms. Jordan?
The finance committee, I served on that, and they did have a problem with getting enough people on. So it was easier for them when it was a hybrid because of the fact that they could at least make a quorum. When they did not have that, they were not able to do any business at all because of the fact that they did not have enough people. But then again, what you just said, I guess if we're allowing it for one, why would we not allow for them? If we're allowing it for somebody who is sick because if somebody's sick, the staff is going to have to get that together and bring the equipment to even do hybrid or a phone call into that meeting for us that what we just said is okay. They're going to have to know in advance to make that all happen. So if we're going to do that for them, then we should be able to do it for finance.
But it's not just finance.
Well, I'm saying just for anybody.
Okay, Mr. Persons?
I guess my question is, how hard is this on the staff to set up a hybrid meeting versus an either-or meeting? And that's out of my lane, so I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know that setting up a meeting fully virtual, face-to-face, or hybrid is any more difficult than any other way. I think it can make it more difficult to know who's going to be attending and how. But I don't know that it's any more difficult.
Is that it, Mr. Persons?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Patrica?
So having just attended the ALBA meeting in a hybrid format, I do think there will be some hiccups in the beginning. But as long as we have somebody on the virtual end who can be communicating directly with a staff member to let them know what's needed virtually to hear and to see and all of that, I think that once we overcome that initial sort of learning curve, I don't think it's an issue at all. And I think that anything we can do to encourage participation by our committee members is important. So I don't know, I'm wondering if we even need, a way to fix this might be to take out the part of D there. If a member is ill, has a family member who's ill, or is traveling for business, I mean, can we just allow anyone to attend hybrid? Oh no, all right, I see where you're making the change. All committees. Never mind. I take back everything I just said, except for I'm in favor of hybrid. This is the problem with long meetings. You start to make no sense at the end.
Okay, Ms. Juvenelli, followed by Ms. Jordan.
So this came up in my meeting as well. But the other concern that I was thinking is, okay, so if you're going to now start, allow Zoom option, I guess, right? Hybrid's going to be Zoom. So therefore, the public also have that same option, correct? The public is going to be able to jump in on the Zoom too, right?
So there's a couple of things. We're not doing Zoom, we're doing Teams. Well, there's a difference because I know that there was at least one committee that had some difficulty with doing the Teams meeting. So we have to make sure that from a technological standpoint that we can accomplish. I'm sure that we can. And yes, I would agree that if this is going to be a hybrid meeting or a virtual meeting, then the public needs to be able to have access to participate.
So that leads me back to, then that can be video recorded by someone doing that because those are video at that point. So, and we were kind of getting away with that and going audio, but that leaves the public options to, they can video any of that with their phone and whatnot. So just have to keep that piece in mind is why I'm bringing that up.
Okay, up next is Ms. Jordan, though.
The only thing I was going to add, and this goes back 3 years, and I did speak to Ms. Dupree-Bruno about it. There was a time when I was on EDAC where a person had to leave for work duties, but wanted to participate. So they were able to phone in and be on the phone. They were not recorded. They were not on Zoom. They were on the phone, just like a speaker phone, and they were able to participate that way. And that's been like 3 or 4 years ago, but I did share that.
Okay. Okay, up next is Ms. Morgan, followed by Ms. Patrica, followed by Ms. Juvenelli.
And I'm trying to remember how all of these different things work, but isn't there a way for people to participate via chat, even if they're not visually participating? Yes. Just throwing out the question.
So I'm not, Ms. Morgan, are you referring to if there's a virtual meeting for somebody? So I do not counsel that members of the Board Advisory Committees participate via chat because of sunshine concerns. I do have one board that does do that, but they have very specific, stringent requirements that they utilize to be able to accomplish that, and it's still not my favorite thing just because of potential sunshine violations.
Next up, Ms. Patrica.
Yeah, it's strategic planning and accountability. Sorry.
Ms. Juvenelli.
So when there's presentations on the teams, you know, that accessibility needs to be there. On the phone, you don't have that. You know, you're not going to be able to see the presentations. You might be able to hear them, but you're not going to be able to see. That's the nice thing about the option of hybrid, I would say, or Teams or Zoom, whatever, you know. I know that I was going to might give my update quickly today, but that's the choice they did. They chose to do virtual, all the meetings for DAC. So, and then they break out into their separate little, rooms, and then they come back, and that's all done virtually versus in person. They chose not to do in person because a couple of the people actually said, I thought this was only virtually anyways, or I wouldn't have signed up. So that's just 2 cents or 10. I don't know how any more it can be. Inflation. Thank you.
Real quick, do you mind if I ask a question, Ms. Morgan?
No, I was just trying to get Mr. to stay in the room because I was going to direct a question to him. Go right ahead.
Okay. Just wanted to, if somebody could refresh my recollection on this, essentially what was the genesis behind going hybrid? Because obviously we made that point during our policy change. I don't remember why, so I don't know if anyone or Attorney Dupree-Bruno or anyone here on the board.
So in the discussions with staff and when we were discussing this, some felt that it was harder to have the meeting when you have some people on the screen and some people in person. It sometimes disrupts the flow of the meeting, but that was really the genesis of that.
Okay, to the through the chair, to the superintendent, perhaps to Mr. Gomez. Perhaps he should come back and make a recommendation about various ways, understanding what it is we're trying to accomplish in our committee meetings. You know, what is the best vehicle for doing this? If we want to have a hybrid meeting using Teams or Zoom or phone or whatever. Thank you.
When it comes to communication works best face-to-face. Face-to-face will always be the best communication because you gauge and are able to see body language, response, eye contact. The research and the science is that is very clear. The next, although it's uncomfortable sometimes, probably the next best is some form of visual that adds both the visual face or person as well as their voice, because now you at least still have two of it. You may not be able to see hand movement and folding of arms or tapping of fingers, but you see enough to be able to interact. Phone is clearly one of the last ways communication is best done, and then I always add email at the very bottom, because email is the way you read things, but that's not under discussion at the moment, because you tend to read things based upon the mood you're in. And you add feeling into a person's words that may not be there. So I think face-to-face is best, hybrid is the next best, and participating by phone, while I have done that, I think the board members are correct. If there's presentations going on, it's difficult to see, difficult to understand, but at least you are in attendance of the meeting and it could help with a quorum. I will certainly speak to Mr. Gomez to make some determinations as to if he has any additional research related to that. But I would defer back. I think what we're really discussing is a legal issue. At what point do you have, to gain a quorum, is somebody participating via a Teams meeting, an active member or participant, et cetera?
So for board advisory committees, the statute was changed and allows for a quorum to be formed even if people are online participating virtually. It's different for board members, but in terms of board advisory committees, it did make that allowance.
Ms. Patrica and then Ms. Jordan.
I called Mr. Gomez by the wrong last name, so I'm really sorry. I'm really bad with names, and I'm really sorry.
Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. Again, we have to remember, too, when we're in these meetings, because we're all sitting in those meetings, so you have a staff member, and even at the Alva, I was there, and Mr. Ramirez and everybody else was jumping up trying to get the computer to turn around in the right direction so everybody could see, and then jump back up, turn it around. So there's going to have to be that individual that's going to be monitoring the Zoom or Teams. They have to watch that and which direction that they're putting in to accommodate everybody in that room. So that's probably an extra staff. Are we now putting that on the person who is the district liaison?
I'd like to make just a quick comment. I understand how the hybrid's been before and that it's been helpful, but me personally, I prefer face-to-face unless it's absolute necessity on that. Other local governing bodies, their committees are generally in person, so I could be wrong specifically on some of them, but I understand making the accommodation when someone is sick or there's business. Most of these boards, I thought for the presentations that we get at least some of us get the materials before, at least an email, or if not, maybe we could have that, so if somebody does, maybe do a call-in or something like that. So I don't know what my fellow board members think. Ms. Juvenelli?
So I know this wasn't favorable completely, but I like that they recorded it, just the video recording, because I could go back and watch it and listen and I could hear everything. And so if you had the video going, someone could still be watching that live. Oh, no, they weren't even live. So they would come back on later, but you could go back and review it. But if they were on the phone, then they could actually vote with the quorum. I don't know. I just wanted to have that conversation and bring up that the ability to see what was happening and to see the actual presentations was really critical for me, because I could go back and watch and see what happened in the different meetings, the different committees. Thank you.
Ms. Morgan, followed by Mr. Persons.
So I'm going to just say that my position is at this point that we eliminate hybrid meetings and we do allow people to participate if they are ill or traveling on business, because I really do want to force the issue of people attending in person. It's unfortunate with staff. Essentially, you're going to have somebody there in case someone has to participate via Zoom, is ill or on business for virtually every meeting, but my preference would be not to allow hybrid meetings at this point, but to allow certain exceptions in terms of personal attendance. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Persons.
I believe the options aren't exactly those two things, because we do allow a committee to do virtual. Am I correct? So if they can do virtual or they can do in person, what we're really discussing here is hybrid going to be an option? But each committee will have to decide which one of those three they want to do. It's not like it's going to be an option for them. It should be each committee has the choice of in person, because some of them really want that, virtual. I'm on the construction committee, is in person right now. That's what they want. Virtual is the audit committee, I believe. And then hybrid could be another committee. But that's what they decide, you know. What we need to decide here is, are we going to give them just 2 options or 3 options, is what we're deciding. How they do the hybrid, we don't have to decide that today. It's just, we know it's doable. So to me, it looks like either we add an option of hybrid or we leave it at either virtual or in person. And I'm for adding it. I think most of them probably don't want to do it, but that'll be up to the committee themselves.
Thank you, chairpersons. I think Ms. Patrico's next.
Yeah, I do believe that the request to allow quorum virtually came from this board. And the reason for that is because we had significantly higher participation when we allowed people to participate virtually. If we are trying to get parents and families more engaged, eliminating hybrid is not the way to do it. Because at the end of a long day, the last thing I want to do is get in the car and drive down to the district for a meeting. So hybrid allows parents who are exhausted after soccer practice and school and making dinner and all of those things to just turn on the computer, and they don't even have to be on camera, and they can still participate. Some people feel more comfortable talking if you can't see them, which gets to Dr. Bernier's point about perhaps it not being the best form of communication. But if we're looking for our community to engage and to provide feedback, I believe that the hybrid option is the way to go.
Ms. Jordan?
Okay, some of us have already had committee meetings based on what our discussion was prior. And in those meetings, we spoke about what did that look like to the meetings, to that committee. And I know EDAC decided that they wanted to be in person. So for us now to go back and go, oh, guess what, guys, now we decided we're going to add something. I just think that we have to stay consistent. We can't keep changing our minds on what we want, because now we will have to go back to those committees and ask them. And then again, how does that work? So every time there's, EDAC will be on Monday. So is an email sent out to EDAC on, guys, you now have an opportunity. You can be on hybrid. Here's your link if you want to be there. So now what incentives does that give that person? I know personally when I speak to people to be on these committees, I tell them exactly what they need to do. I tell them that it's X amount of days that they will have to be there in person to be engaged, 3 or 4 meetings, whatever that is, and what the job description is for those committees. So I know I always have that conversation. So the people that I have chosen know that they're going to be expected to be there and to participate. So I'm just trying to figure out how do we go back now and tell these other committees that now you have another option, and what does that look like going forward?
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Actually, when I had talked to my people, I mentioned the same thing. So it looks like we have 2 options up here. Ms. Morgan had indicated that we keep as is, and Mr. Persons would like to move forward with a hybrid option. So I guess we need to figure out kind of what direction we want to take. So I would be supporting Ms. Morgan's keeping as is right at the moment. Let's see, who would have an objection to that? Okay, anybody else?
Do you mind if I comment
Yeah, proceed.
really quickly? I just find it, I was just at the ISOC committee meeting, and while I am actually very privy to how MS Teams works and how Zoom works, it's not that difficult. You can break off into rooms, but then you have to be careful about what you're discussing in rooms, so I understand all that. But I also understand me being a working mom, if I wasn't on the board and I wanted to be a participant in committee meetings and be a little bit more engaged in my children's education, and I lived in St. James City, and I can't get all the way to the district office, but I'm not sick, I don't have work, I just live an hour away, and I have 2 children who need to get to soccer practice, I completely understand what you're saying. I just think we need to make sure that these people are volunteering their time, and we're trying to get more families involved. And I think we need to be very careful about drawing this line in the sand where it's either in person or you can't participate, because I think we're just going to have a really hard time starting to get people to volunteer. But I also agree with Dr. Bernier. Yes, face-to-face is always the best form of communication, and I think we need to make sure that when we are asking our constituents in the community to be a part of this, we need to be really clear about, we prefer you be at the meetings in person. So I could go either way. I hate to get rid of the virtual altogether, though, and perhaps we need to allow the language to be here and let each committee decide on what they want, because there's a board for each committee. And let those people decide on, be it finance or EDAC, let that board decide what they want to do in their 1 or 2 year term.
Dr. Bernier?
If I may, I just think it's really important to remind the board that you, when you're considering these options, you have a particular group, the DAC committee, that survives on a virtual model. So I think it seems to me, if I may, that having a virtual model or being in person, right, is where you're at. You know those are the options. The question for you is a hybrid. But I think if I want to just settle the people down on the DAC committee who come from everywhere, and they have a very effective use. I was invited to their meeting the other night to give words of welcome. They have very effective use of a virtual environment, including breakout meeting rooms, the whole 9 yards. They've put it in a good spot. They've put us in a good spot. So I just want to make sure that virtual stays on the table as an opportunity along with face-to-face.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. Yeah, I believe we would keep the choice, depending on which option, it would still be virtual in-person or virtual in-person hybrid. So I think we still need a little bit more.
And again, I agree with Ms. Fleming. Each committee would basically have to make that decision for basically the year, I would think. So everybody knows it's on the committee, and we can list it on when they're meeting to what their options are. This committee is in person. You know, when the public, they know they have to come here. This meeting is virtual only, and they can tune into that, or it could be a hybrid. You know, I mean, that's how I see it happening. I don't see it like each week, all of a sudden, oh, next week we're going to do in person. Everybody has to be here, and then the following month, I said week, but I meant month. They say, oh, we're going to do virtual next month. I think they need to be consistent. You know, and I think most of them would be. Like you say, EDAC would definitely be virtual. They're good at it and they want to stay there.
But turning to Bree Bruno, then we'll get back to, I think it was Ms. Patrica, or Ms. Giovanelli, sorry.
So just for clarification, the current policy does say that at the beginning, at your first meeting, you are to decide whether or not you're going to be in person or you're going to have virtual meetings. So based on my recollection, DAC chose to have virtual meetings. Finance Advisory Committee, I believe, was in person, but they're the ones who are asking for the hybrid because they did have some individuals at the first meeting that appeared online. Curriculum Advisory is in person. Strategic Planning and Accountability, I believe they chose to be virtual. And EDAC is in person. So they've all made a choice. It's just that questions have come up with regards to the hybrid. I believe finance was one, and there may have been another committee that asked a question. The main burning question that they had is, if I'm sick, if I have a death in the family, or there's something going on, I'm traveling on business, may I still participate? Because the board now has that more restriction in terms of if you miss 2 meetings, you are removed from the list. So that's really what they were asking. But to Ms. Morgan's point, there were also questions about participating hybrid.
Ms. Giovanelli.
No, go ahead.
Ms. Morgan.
Oh, and one of the things that came up in my meeting, our meeting, Finance Advisory, there's a woman who, actually there were 2 people who participate from work because they don't get off from work before the meeting starts and they want the opportunity to participate. So I just wanted to mention that it's not just about illness and out of town on business. It's also about, I can participate if I can participate from the office, so.
So that leads me to be like, are we really being inclusive? Or are we being exclusive? So I think that we have to really think about the big picture, and we want participation, because I know that DAC, they had to take a couple votes. They had to do it a couple times because they weren't sure if they were getting, who wanted to do it. So there was a strong wanting it in person, and there was a strong group that wanted it virtual. So I just think that I think we just need to be inclusive, and so I'm going to support the hybrid, I think, at this point, after the conversation. Thank you.
I would say, and I agree with what everyone's saying up here, to me, this is not, I'm easily able to go over to hybrid in this. I mean, I guess it's already there anyway. I don't want to make a big deal out of this, so I think I would say, at least guidance-wise, I think Attorney Bruno, do you have your guidance now on this, or?
So the language was changed to in-person, virtual, or hybrid. That's what I'm hearing from the board.
Okay.
Okay.
Ms. Giovanelli?
So maybe regarding the hybrid, if it's going to be hybrid, that we require a notice, a good, so that they know that the option, or is it just always going to have a Zoom link? I'm sorry, or a Teams link, or whatever. So what would be the actual, procedure there,
So it will have to go back to the committees in October for the committees to make their final decision as to how they want to proceed. I would imagine that many will go ahead and choose hybrid, and from there we'll have to just set it up with staff.
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
Thank you. Is everyone ready to move on to the other policies? Thank you for the discussion. Do you want me to just ask if there's any policies in particular? So I'm going to ask board members, are there any particular policies you want Attorney Bruno and the board to address at this moment? Ms. Patrica.
Yes, for the discretionary compensation for elected superintendent, there's still a word missing in that last sentence.
So the change on that policy is reflected on the screen. To make sure we were in compliance, if you remember, Attorney Dietzen said that we needed to be careful with the language because of FRS requirements, so we changed it to supplement. Is that what you're referencing, Ms. Patrica?
No, that is not what I saw that's not what's in board docs. So that's, what you have up there is not what I saw in preparation for today's meeting.
So is this language okay with you?
Yeah.
And then the other change was in due consideration of talc and spalk. That's in the second paragraph.
I'm not sure that makes sense. I don't understand what that means.
So there was some discussion by board members regarding consideration of talc and spalk when raising salary, and normally the administrative salary schedule follows whatever occurs with talc and spalk. So in order to try to address that concern and recognizing that it does follow talc and spalk, it just says in due consideration. The administrative salary schedule may receive from time to time in due consideration of talc and spalk, which is always considered.
Any comments on this language? Is the board supportive of the due consideration of talc and spalk in there?
I don't really think it needs to be in there because that is the way it is, period.
For me, I was going to say the same. I don't see it needing in there, but Ms. Juvenelli.
And you were here, and I brought this up before, but there was a time when administrative salaries were increased before spalk and talc. And,
Mr. Chair?
and that's
To
why.
interrupt the board member. As long as this was sort of a line and language issue, I felt comfortable sitting. But if we're going to, and I'm just sorry to interrupt, but if it's going to get into a deeper conversation, I just think it's wise that I just step aside and allow Mr. Ramirez to take my seat during this part of the board policy review.
You are
So thank you. Thank you. I'll come back.
And so for me, this was about recognizing our spalk and talc and knowing, to give them a comfort level of that salary increases won't happen. And that's the reason why I'm bringing it up. It's just a reminder, let's not forget them, because I feel like sometimes they feel they're forgotten, and our actions have seemed to be that they've been forgotten. So I think it's important to have them in there. Thank you.
Comments on that language, Mr. Persons?
Well, I just have a question exactly how this works. I mean, the way I'm reading it, if the highest salary, let's just say, is $200,000, where does the superintendent start at? It just says it has to be no less than 200, but what is it? Is it 200,000, I mean, 200,000, 1 penny? I mean, we need to sort of decide, I think, something where people can figure out what the salary is. $1 more or something. I mean, I just think for clarity, we need to do something there. And the other, it looks like it will never be more than supplement. It says discretion, the majority may vote, the board may increase the superintendent's base with a supplement at a rate of, oh, it doesn't say a rate, I'm sorry, it's crossed through, my mistake. So anyway, I just thought the base salary should be a number, and it could change because we don't know what the highest paid employee will be at any one moment, but it is, maybe we should put in there $1 more, or rather than always more, or 1,000 more. I don't know. I mean, something that makes sense for someone running.
I was kind of thinking, based on our last discussions, I mean, I would in agreement with having $1 more. I kind of thought that's where we were
That's
going.
fine. I mean, I just think it should be in there is all I'm saying.
Board? How do you feel about that, Ms. Patrica?
As it's written, does the board have, this is a question for the board attorney through the chair, if I may, does the board have the ability to determine what that means? Should our highest paid employees start to make $250,000, does the board look at the policy and decide, okay, it's $250,000 and $1? Like, how would that play out in the scenario Mr. Persons just provided, please?
I think it's exactly what you said. So the way that it is currently written, it gives a lot of leeway to the board to make that determination at the time. It's usually better to be as specific as you possibly can be, but this is what the board wanted from our last discussion, to give you that leeway.
And that's the point. The flexibility is exactly what I've been trying to provide to future boards through the wording here. So I'm comfortable with it as is. And I understand, if I may, while we're here, I understand what Ms. Giovanelli is saying about talc and spalk. I don't necessarily recall history the same way she does, but I do understand that talc and spalk need consideration. It's just so inartfully worded that I'm not sure it makes sense in there. So I'll go with the will of the board on the talc and spout language. And it's nobody's fault that it's inartfully worded, it just is. I can't think of a better way to say it.
Mr. Persons?
I still don't understand. Opponent X gets elected. What is his salary or her salary? Do we decide that when they're sworn in and say, okay, now we're going to vote on your salary? It's going to be $1 more, or it's going to be 50,000, whatever. I feel very strange being in that spot to do that. I mean, I think we need to have a firm starting point.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, even if you want to say equal to the highest employee, you know, but whatever, we need to do, I feel we need to do something so that person knows at a minimum, you know, they know they're going to make more, but they should know what they're making. You know, and then if we want to give a supplement or whatever, I'm all for that. I like that idea that we can raise it, but I think there should be something firm.
Okay, let me real quick go back because we have a couple of competing points. First, I think let's address the due consideration of talc and spout. I'm going to ask who on the board objects to having that language. I will be objecting.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that's going to stay in there. Yeah. In regards to that, it looks like it was, okay. Next up, let's address the salary part. Let's go, does anybody object to then having an amount, let's say $1 more in regards to the salary for the superintendent defined in this policy? Who would be objecting to that? Okay, Ms. Patrica, go.
I'm not sure I object, I just am not sure why it's necessary. What is the dollar amount the superintendent is making? That's what the first sentence tells us. The first sentence tells us what the salary is, and then the second paragraph tells us that if that salary is below the highest paid employee, then the superintendent shall not make less than that. And then the board has the discretion to determine what above that highest paid employee the superintendent should get. So I don't think anybody throwing their hat into the ring for this job doesn't know what they'll be making.
Thank you. One of the things I had suggested before was having some kind of annual, I want to be careful with my wording, salary review. Do we want to maybe put that in there that would address that? Maybe we could have it set, I would say, election time or reorg, or after, I mean. But I don't know. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
It's already in there.
There's something in there.
Already in there. Last sentence, it's in there.
But the time for it.
Any given fiscal year.
But the timing.
Well, yeah.
That's what I was asking.
So if you look at paragraph number 3, that's the one that's specifically talking about initial compensation may be made either on the anniversary date of election or other special circumstances occur.
Because it's a may in there, that's why I was addressing that. Ms. Juvenelli, followed by Ms. Langford Fleming.
So statutorily, they get an increase. We never know what that is. That's done by the state, so, or, you know, or Tallahassee. So that is an automatic. We have no control over that. So I'm not, I mean, I guess I like what it said about the election date. You know, that's going to be after what Tallahassee's already determined. So that won't change until the following. So because it just came out recently. So what was that, August? So it'll be already, you know, that anniversary date is a given from. I like it. Thank you.
Ms. Langford Fleming?
That's a great point, Ms. Giovanelli. But like our attorney has recommended, I think if we can get this as specific as possible, it would be helpful. And I like Mr. Fisher's suggestion of taking May out. So I'm not sure if we can, if election's in November and the salary schedule comes out in August, like you had stated, Ms. Giovanelli, it would be hard to nail down an actual date, or are we able to do that?
So if you want to put a particular month, like September, by September, the board will designate the particular salary. I mean, you can do that if you want to.
I'm in favor of being as specific as possible, so.
Anyone else be in favor of putting a date, meaning a month, I guess, in for this policy? My question, I think Mr. Persons was talking about, is right now, the shall not make less will trigger right now, just because of it's 190,000 and we're at 205 is our salary schedule, I think. So, where it may not be true in the future, but, so Ms. Langford Fleming, Mr. Persons, anyone else interested in having a date in there? Okay, I would be, I guess that's not a majority at that point in regards, so that's out then. Let's see. Okay, I'll ask, oh, go ahead, Mr. Persons.
I was just saying, I mean, I can live with this. I just was trying to foresee some problems further down the road.
Okay.
You know, to me, it's just sort of ambiguous, that's all. And again, like I say, I like specific is better. So that's all.
So
but I can live with it.
So let me ask this, who would be opposed to moving forward with this policy in its current language? Okay, I think we can move on to the next reading then at this point with that, so. Any other board members have policies they wish to pull out to discuss right now? Ms. Morgan?
I just want to make a comment. There is a difference between what's in, and that raises the concern, are there other differences that we're not seeing in these policies?
So to answer that question, Ms. Morgan, no, there is not. So we had one-on-ones on Friday. So the discretionary policy that was uploaded on board docs was the one that we had previously approved. But then we had our one-on-ones on Friday. There were changes, and that's the one that's up there. But there are no other policies like that.
Thank you. Good question.
Ms. Giovanelli?
But the public has the old one like us, right? So how do we, I think we kind of probably need both.
So the public will be able to see, because this is an open briefing, so as we're discussing and making changes to the policy, the public is able to come in and have that discussion as well. And then, of course, when it goes to second reading, it will be a public hearing, and the public will also have an opportunity to provide comment.
Thank you.
Okay, any comments, any other policies we want discussed? Okay, is this board ready to move forward with the remaining policies into a second reading? No objection? Ms. Jordan?
I just want to make sure, if I may, Mr. Prebrino, 2410.1 is nowhere.
The mental health policy, no, that has been removed. You will have another batch of policies which are pre-brief on October 17th.
Thank you.
And we most likely will be keeping most of the language of our current mental health policy 4.22 and then adding whatever that statutory change. So, but that will be coming on October 17th.
Thank you.
Attorney DeBrey-Brown, do you have any other questions?
No, we'll be moving this to second reading on October 17th for public hearing. Thank you, Board.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up will be public comment. Item C1, and whenever Attorney DeBrey-Bruno is ready to address public comment, proceed, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do believe that there is one individual that I'd like to speak, so I'll go ahead and advise the board. School board policy provides the opportunity at this point in the meeting to address the board concerning any matter on this meeting's agenda. If you completed a public comment card, please provide it. To staff, the public comment will be held at the podium in the center aisle and then the front. Please be advised that the board will not respond during public comment to remarks made by speakers. However, at the conclusion of public comment, the chair or the superintendent may respond. Speakers who fail to follow proper decorum in the chambers will be ruled out of order. Any speaker continuing with such remarks will be required to relinquish the microphone per Board Policy 1.11 and may be removed from the chambers. There will be one warning. Per Board Policy 1.11, the time per speaker is 3 minutes. You will find a countdown on the big screen in the front of the room. Once your time has elapsed, the microphone will automatically shut off. The only person I believe that we have, Mr. Chairman, is Jamie Merchant.
Okay, just to confirm, there's nobody else in the room that I see that wants to give public comment that is not signed up. Seeing none, please proceed. Attorney Debris Bruno.
Ms. Merchant, please come forward.
Though, because the policies that I have a question about weren't even discussed, but they were on board docs attached to today's agenda, so if they weren't discussed, am I even allowed to?
Any item that is on the agenda for the briefing, you may discuss them.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure, so you didn't have to tell me to stop talking. Okay, thank you. Jamie Merchant, policies 2520, 2521, and 2522, I believe. I was researching and curious about the relationship between the district and the American Library Association, so I went on to Board Docs and just searched American Library Association, and these three policies came up, but I don't see a reference like that just flat out says American Library Association, just like in policy 2.18. But it was just pointed out to me that in one of the process documents, the ALA is considered a source for book reviews, and in my honest opinion, I believe we need to separate ourselves from this organization. The president of the ALA is a self-proclaimed Marxist, and the organization itself has a history of promoting explicit LGBT materials and drag queen story hours. Their destructive agenda harms children by undermining parental authority. Over the last 3 years, the state of Florida has passed many laws that remove CRT agenda, a socialist agenda from curriculum, as well as limiting classroom discussion in gender identity or sexual orientation by empowering parents and putting them in the driver's seat when it comes to their children's education. The state of Florida has made it very clear that we object to everything the ALA and its current president stands for, and they should no longer be considered a reliable source to our instructional materials and or media center books. And then I had a question about, I don't recall the policy, the committee policy. Is there a reason why we're limiting it to one committee per person or per member? I mean, I'm going to sound greedy for like 0.5 seconds, but I was on Quack and DAC last year. I learned so much, and I had a blast. And now I don't believe there was any sort of conflict of interest in serving on both of those committees, at least to my knowledge, and no one's said that there has been, so I don't believe there actually is. But I also don't believe that there are hundreds of people lining up to serve on these committees either, so I feel like if there is somebody who is willing to stand up and serve, let them. And I forgot my last point, but I think I saw red, so never mind. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Merchant. Dr. Bernier, do you have any follow-up at this time?
I can follow up on one of the questions as to how the policies were authored. I would have to defer to someone else, but specifically, are we using ALA? When we do book reviews for the Media Center, there is some use of an ALA platform, but we also use Kirkus, KIRKUS, Booklist, and the School Library Journal. We also use Common Sense Media, which is not a professional journal, but is a crowdsourced review, which is recommended by the state in its media training. So we are using items, not solely any one item, we're using multiple items with which to conduct the book review, so in order that we're as fair and as partial as possible. As to the language of the policy, I would have to get back to you unless there's someone else who can weigh in.
With regards to ALA, and I'm not sure how, when you search, if you put American Library Association, because the library's in it, perhaps that will come up, but there is no reference specifically of ALA to the policy itself. Those would be in any attached or processed documents.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. At this point, we're going to move on to board comment and go to the order. I will start with Ms. Juvenelli.
I have nothing, thank you.
Ms. Patrica?
No, thank you.
Ms. Jordan?
I have nothing at this time, thank you.
Mr. Persons?
Yes, I just want to report, I went to the audit committee, and they've already had done their reorganization, so they already elected their chairman and all that, so they actually got down to work. RSM was there, they did a presentation, and they'll be coming before us shortly, the audit committee, what they're recommending to audit this year. Construction, they did the organization meeting, and as y'all have been to those committee meetings, that's basically all they do that night. So there's nothing really to report there. They didn't do any business to speak of, other than elect their chairman.
Ms. Langford Fleming?
Yes, I don't need to update you on the ISOC because they did a great job there. But I was able to sit in on the health advisory. I made some notes. I'm not sure if many of you board members know that we have an amazing organization that's partnering with our district, and they are basically building these amazing gardens at so many of our schools. And I learned so much from the health advisory. What an outstanding group of people. There are over 50 gardens now in the school district. Last year alone, I was blown away by this. 7,500 pounds of vegetables were utilized in our cafeterias. So I thought that was great. Mark your calendars for October 14th if you want to help with the garden being built at, or at least the beginning phases of it, at Heights Elementary. Sprouts, the new grocery store that came into our county, donated $25,000 to help fund these gardens in our schools. And then the third thing that I would like to talk about is they're doing Farmer Market Fridays at some of the schools. Thought that was really awesome, so these kids can take home vegetables also home for the weekend. And then there's this amazing digital magazine that is a nationwide magazine, and only 20 districts were chosen to participate in this magazine, and each page is a QR code in local, or not local farms around the country, but what schools are partnering with them, and our Island Coast High School made the magazine, so I was just going to give a shout out on that, and that is all I have from Health Advisory.
Ms. Morgan?
Oh,
Ms. Jordan?
thank you for telling me that. I heard all about that through Alicia Roy, and I was just wondering, because I promised her, and I forgot, that I would ask, so thank you for reminding me, that I would ask if they would be able to come and do a presentation because of all the stuff that has taken place, and we have not heard from them for quite some time. So that would be maybe superintendent?
That'd be a great workshop. I agree. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I'll work with Dr. Savage to get it scheduled.
Ms. Morgan?
Let's see, Policy Council, the enrollment in Head Start is 666 out of 720 eligible seats. So obviously, we have more seats than we have students in them. I'll get back to that in a minute. Early Head Start, 88 out of 88. Child Care Partnership, 67 out of 72. Early Head Start and Child Care Partnership expect to fill their vacancies. The problem with Head Start is we are short due to lack of teachers and support staff in those classrooms. So we have classrooms and we have teachers or seats but we don't have teachers. James Stevens has room for one more classroom. Bonita and Lehigh have openings for one classroom each. So that's Policy Council. And, you know, what we pay early childhood people and what we expect of them, there's a significant disconnect. And that's not our problem. That is a statewide problem and a national problem. Finance Advisory, other than the motion that they made and approved, I basically reviewed the basic budget numbers for the 23-24 budget. Ms. Letcher will be presenting the budget at the October meeting. I like to comment about the district reporters in the board member update, because I learn a lot, and I just want to call out some things that I thought were particularly interesting. The Island Coast High School students tour of Charlotte Technical College's aviation program for potential dual enrollment. The high performance of adult ESOL students at our Goodwill location, and the ESOL student who secured employment with Heights Elementary as instructional support. I wouldn't have known about these things if it hadn't appeared in the board member update. And I like to be able to, you know, talk to people about the kinds of things that are happening. So thank you to you. And the ESE report on planning sessions for teachers and the parent positive responses to ESE support in the parent advisory meetings. Again, I think we're making an improvement in terms of accessibility and content that is important to those families. And then in positive prevention, the update on the PBIS Tier 1 booster training. I'm glad we continue to participate in that. I look forward to the day when everybody is on the PBS program. I guess I'll congratulate the nursing instructor also at Fort Myers and Cape Coral Technical College. She was just one of just 15 advanced degree nursing students nationwide to be awarded a nursing education scholarship. So I think that's fantastic. And congratulations to the TALC negotiating team. Well done. I haven't had a chance to watch the meeting, but I am excited that we have a tentative agreement, and I'm especially pleased that there is also an agreement to continue discussions regarding a longer student day as part of the next negotiations. So those are my comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. What? Oh, Ms. Giovanelli, sorry. I thought you were pointing at Dr. Bernier.
No, my apologies. I didn't update on, we had DAC meeting last week, and all they did was pick their chair and vice chair and secretary, but and they decided to have it all virtual. So I think I said that earlier, but I just thought I better kind of touch, since the others did too, I better jump back on there on that. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Piggyback, thank you for talking about the gardens, Ms. Langford Fleming. It's something my son actually went through that program at one of the pilot schools around here. It was a fantastic thing. I'm glad to hear that they're doing more with that. I think it's great for our community and our school district. So real quick, I attended the Strategic Planning and Accountability Committee. Most of it was just the reorganization of it. They did ask, as many other committees, and did make a motion asking for what we just did in regards to the being unable to attend policy. So we've cleared that up. Besides that, there was a quick introduction to our draft strategic plan update, and it seemed to go over very well with them. Outside of that, I will hold the rest of my comments for tonight. Thank you. Dr. Bernier?
Nothing for good of the order.
Attorney Dupree-Bruno?
I have nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this moment, there will be a student performance tonight at 5:45 p.m., followed by our action meeting at 6 o'clock. Seeing no other business to come for this board, this meeting is adjourned at 4:13 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.